What's up, San Diego? Not as much of a rainy morning this morning, but still kind of cold and wintry. It's the last couple weeks of winter. We're almost there to spring. We had that false sense of spring over the weekends, some beautiful days. Now we just got to grind through some rainy days. Today, out of all the days this week, today's supposed to be the day that rains the least. It's just going to be kind of cloud cover. So hopefully it's not too wet where you're at or too rainy and cold. Try to get rid of those days. I mean, I know there's some people that love this type of weather. I don't necessarily like it on an everyday basis. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Maybe a little mix up every once in a while to get some seasons, but even though I lived in Texas for a little bit of time, it's not like crazy weather. It changes all the time. It's not like it's just a little bit. Like, it's not like when you go through the wintertime, it's always cold every single day. But as Jocelyn pointed out, and I agree, need some dry baseball fields for the kids that played Little League baseball and softball. How many rainouts have there been? It's been a long time since I've been in the Little League circuit. Now Adam's coaching Little League now, so he might be able to fill in for me. But I remember just last Saturday, it was a beautiful day, right? And it rained a little bit earlier in the week. And Scripps Ranch Little League banged the games because the fields are too wet, and they don't really have too much control over that. It's the city, right? And we played on it. We do boot camp every Saturday. It's kind of a Frisbee thing that used to be with Fitness Quest 10 over in Scripps Ranch. So we play this Frisbee. It's not like it's ultimate Frisbee, but not really. Like, there's some other rules that are in play, and we're in a group text that runs the deal. And one of the guys that plays, Ethan, texted and said, Little League's canceled, so I'm in. So we're out there playing Frisbee on a field in the same neighborhood, and all the Little League games got canceled because of rain. I remember sometimes when I was a kid playing, and the city wouldn't let us play on the field, and my dad said one time, he was like, I feel like I have spit on fields that are wetter than this. I mean, I can't believe this is the way that it is. But how many games have you gotten in so far?
We've had plenty of games with a couple cancellations, but if we're talking just like real world problems, like as a parent, it affects your scheduling.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I don't know if my daughter's game is going to happen. We're communicating through this app. Is the game going to be rained out? Is it going to happen? And then my wife and I are having conversations like, well, the coach says the game's going to happen, but the forecast says 100% chance of rain. Do we really want to drive all the way out there just to have her stand in the rain and then end up getting canceled? And so those are the real life conversations that we're having.
Here's the difference, right? I say this a lot because when it rains, like before, there's a couple things that now affect my life when it comes to the rain. One is USD baseball, but they have a tarp. So if there's a chance to play, they're playing. Like, got the tarp. We're going to, and all their players on their team do the field work and everything like that. They're playing baseball. But so I don't really have to worry as long as it's not raining at the time, and they'll play through some rain, and they got enough teams that come into town that, they're not going to fly in, not play and fly out. They're probably going to play. The other one is softball. Now, softball, here's the major difference between the two places, the Poway and the Santee Sportsplex, and if you play softball at Citi Field. Citi Field doesn't really care if you play or not because there's not money to be made if the games are being played. But for the two sports complexes, if they don't play, they don't get paid. Like, that's the big money maker for those places. You got to have games out there. So even though it rained yesterday, if it's not raining today, there might be a good chance that they flip the fields over to a playable sense and you're playing. I mean, I've probably played more softball games than most kids have played Little League games this year. They flipped the fields over there fast. I'm not holding my breath tonight, and I don't necessarily know if I want to play it at 9 and 10 on cold nights like potentially tonight. But I'm fully ready to play if necessary, which is a shame because the kids should be playing at all these places. So hopefully we can get some dry fields. But based on the way that the weather is, I would imagine if your Little League plays at a Citi Field, you're probably not playing on Saturday, regardless if it's raining Saturday or not. Hate to break it to you. I've totally forgotten about that. It's the same with like high school baseball and everything like that. High school baseball and softball is probably so backlogged now with all these games they got to make up with some of the rain, especially this week, that they're going to have to flip some fields and everything like that. Joel the kid. It's pouring in San Marcos. My 8-year-old son plays San Marcos youth baseball, and his practice and game were canceled last week and this week too. Yeah, it's almost like you need a spring training to get back and going again for some of these little league kids. I'm not going to entertain Sushi Sam's comments. Get out of here. Softball comments. Speaking of, I was telling Adam this. I think I dislocated my rib because it is painful to breathe right now. Like the deep breath, it's killing me. I thought it was a lat issue on Monday, and then I ended up playing softball. And it wasn't too bad lat wise, but last weekend went out with some friends, and one of my buddies got to a different level of fun. I would say that. He says there were some substances put into his drink that he didn't want in there. That's how I'm going to phrase that. But he was still a little aggressive, and I got put into a wall, and just went, and I got hit. It didn't hurt when it happened. And then the weekend it was fine, and then today it was just, Monday through today it's been rough. And I don't know, the local chiropractor that is at the gym, who's also the chiropractor for the Padres. He just put out a thing that baseball and softball players are more susceptible to a rib subluxation, which I think I might have had. So I needed to go get that checked out. My buddy that next morning, so we went out on Friday night to a couple of places, and I told him to leave it because he drove to meet us, and I said, just leave your truck. My dad's company, his office was nearby one of the places we went to. I said, just leave your truck in the parking lot over there. It'll be fine. And then you can Uber with us the rest of the way, and you can Uber home. And he had a tea time at 10 in the morning the next day, which I was already like, there's no way he's making the 10 a.m. tea time. But he Ubers home from North Park. We went out to a couple of places in North Park. We usually go to Happy Medium, and then we went to True North. And so my buddy Ubers home after he puts me into a fence. And then he has to Uber in the morning. He has a tea time in Oceanside, and he lives in PB. And so he had to Uber to the Scripps Ranch area to get his truck. And then he had to drive to Oceanside. And he's definitely hungover. He's driving on the 78, and he's telling the story. He's like, I'm thinking I'm gonna have to. I can't hold it in much longer. He has to pull over on the 78 and projectile vomit on the side of the freeway to regroup and get back on the horse and go play 18 in Oceanside. And then he went to the Aztec game. That is a rough morning. That is a rough morning. I can't say I've ever had to pull over and do that before. Now, if we remember from last year, during the summertime, Adam might remember this, where I was in San Clemente and I drove down in the morning. I was going to drive down in the morning to get to, I had morning football in the morning. And Interstate 5 between Camp Pendleton is known to have major stoppages. I left San Clemente at 5 in the morning because I had to be at Cathedral at 6. I leave at 5 in the morning, and I'm driving down Interstate 5. I just get past the border patrol check that basically separates Orange County and San Diego County, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of red brake lights, and I don't get much further than that. And I am in a complete stop on the freeway. And unfortunately, there was an accident that happened a couple of hours prior that involved some motorcycles and stuff like that, which was obviously, a tragic experience. And I was parked on the freeway. I was parked. And I remember I drank a bunch of water the night before, and I'm sitting there, and I was like, I texted the coaching staff. I'm like, I'm probably not going to make it on time for football. I'm just trying to go home. Now my goal is just to make it to work. And it's like 7 o'clock rolls by, 8 o'clock rolls by. I have moved probably 100 yards.
Did you get to the point where you turned your car off on the freeway?
Yes, I did that. I did that.
That's wild.
I turned my car off, and people were getting out of their cars, and I didn't have to do this, thank goodness. But I was thinking of like, if this lasted a little bit longer, I'm about to pull to the side and go to the bathroom. I mean, there's multiple people like using their doors to shield and use the bathroom on the side of the road because we were parked for a couple of hours. Finally get it going. And again, I've been on the phone with Adam at this time like 2 or 3 times already. And Adam asked the questions, how much longer do you think it's going to be? I'm like, I have no idea. They are not telling us anything. We're just moving forward. And I get to relatively the point we had to turn back around to head back. And so by that point, it was already 10 a.m. And I told Adam, I was like, I'm probably not going to, I was like, I can't make it because the only way into San Diego is Interstate 5 unless I drive all the way back up, shoot across through Anaheim to Corona, down the 15. By the time that happens, I'm going to be at work at 1:30. Insane travel. That was even the worst. My dad one time got stuck there for 5.5 hours parked on the 5 because a gas tanker flipped and blocked all the roads or blocked all the lanes on the freeway. So that was a interesting start to the show, obviously. But my rib was just killing me. And Adam's like, what happened? Well, might as well tell a story on air. So hopefully it's not that big of a deal. I might have to go see a chiropractor because I think it's dislocated. I thought it was a lat thing, but now it's on both sides of my body. It's the front and the back that's hurting. So I got to get that fixed. Happens a lot when you violent swing motions, which I do at softball. But you know what I don't do? I don't do it nearly as hard and fast on the swing as Gavin Sheets is doing right now in spring training. I mean, the guy is on an absolute tear. He's hit 5 home runs. And so far this this spring training, Gavin Sheets is making a case to make the team. 3 for 3 yesterday, 2 home runs, 2 runs scored, 3 RBIs, a walk-off winner. He's 9 for 34 in the season at 260 on the spring training Cactus League action, hitting 265 with a 1051 OPS, 5 home runs, and 10 RBIs. Is he going to make the team? Is it enough to make the team? We'll answer that question when we come back. The Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every day from 10 to 2 on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3, The Fan.
I'm not
10:20 on a Wednesday morning. Rainy outside. Hopefully not as bad as it was. It was pouring yesterday for a long period of time. And it's supposed to do that again coming up in the next couple of days. Want to mention baseball coverage on 97 through the Fan is presented by T-Mobile at T-Mobile.com and get a great deal on an iPhone 16 Pro. T-Mobile.com. Baseball coverage on 97 through the Fan, which we're getting to right now and talking a lot about Gavin Sheets. Gavin Sheets off to a great start, obviously, to spring training. He's trying to play his way onto the roster. AJ Cassaville put out kind of a roster build of what it would look like, and I think we're going to try to get him on Friday. Something that we kind of did on Monday. And you start looking at the decisions, and here's the thing, and I've seen this a lot on social media. You know, you get a player to play really well in spring training, and everybody's like, he's got to be on the team. He's got to be on the team. It's fair. But every time that you say somebody has to be on the team, you got to take somebody off the team. And there's a lot of love for Connor Joe because he's a local product. There's a lot of love for Tirso Ornelas needs to make this team. He's doing so well this year, and he's from Tijuana. He's close. He's a local guy. Gavin Sheets he hit another home run. He's got to be on the team. There's only so many spots. You got 13 spots on the roster. And you kind of have to play the numbers game. As much of it is a cliche in professional sports, you got to start looking at it, and this is where you make these tough decisions. We already know Elias Diaz is on the team. He's going to be the starting catcher on opening day. Now you're down to 12 spots. You go to the infielders. Well, you know the infield's pretty much set. Arise, Bogaerts, Cronenworth, Machado. That's 4 more positions. Now you're down to 8 spots. You go to the outfield. Merrill and Tatis definitely on the team, as well as the money they spent on Jason Hayward. So now you're down to 5 spots. Based on the way Mike Shildt has talked about Jose Iglesias, sounds like he's part of their plans. So now you're down to 4 spots. Backup catcher needs to be one of those. Now you're down to 3. Tyler Wade, they just gave a contract to, and they talk about how much of a good clubhouse guy and everything like that, and he's versatile as well. Now you're down to 2 spots. And so you got 2 spots left for Connor Joe, Eggy Rosario, Yuli Gurriel, Gavin Sheets, Brandon Lockridge, Tirso Ornelas. 6 players, 2 spots. Eggy Rosario's out of options. You're just going to have to get rid of him from the organization if you don't want to have him make the opening day roster. Connor Joe does have options. You could potentially send him down. You brought him in to be a platoon in left field. Is he going to start in AAA? Yuli Gurriel's got that relationship with Manny. I can't imagine him making the team, but he's one of those veteran guys that usually sneaks on a team. We saw it with Rougned Odor. Gavin Sheets, Tirso Ornelas. Ornelas has options. Sheets has options. He's got 1. You could theoretically have Sheets start in AAA. So out of those 6 players, who are you picking? It's Connor Joe, it's Eggy Rosario, it's Yuli Gurriel, it's Gavin Sheets, it's Brandon Lockridge, and it's Tirso Ornelas. With Jose Iglesias and Tyler Wade, you got a little bit more infield backup already. So you really need a 4th outfielder. Is that going to be Connor Joe? Is that going to be Gavin Sheets? Is that going to be Tirso Ornelas? Do you use speed with Brandon Lockridge? You got to pick 2 of those 6 players. Joe, Rosario, Gurriel, Sheets, Lockridge, or Ornelas. Which leads to another question. and it really has an impact on Gavin Sheets. Should Major League Baseball teams invest heavily in power hitters that have limited roles? If we talk about Gavin Sheets for a second and what he potentially could bring, one, the good thing that goes, one of the good things for him is he's very versatile. Like he could play in a lot of different spots defensively. He's a left-handed hitter. Great having a left-handed hitter, an extra left-handed hitter on the bench. Guy throws right and bats left. That's a good combination in Major League Baseball. He can play a lot of positions in the field, and he swings the bat from the left side, going against a lot of righties. It's good to mix up in a platoon kind of setting. So if you have him at first base, and he is the power, it's almost like a Moneyball situation when it comes to platooning. If he's got to split time at first base with Luis Ariz, and Ariz obviously is going to be in the lineup every day, he's going to flip and be the DH and everything like that. If Gavin Sheets can be that high power hitter, not necessarily for average, but a power hitter that can get you 15, 20 home runs, he can make up for the lack of home runs that Ariz puts over the fence. And where Sheets' average lacks, Ariz picks up. And so now, the reality is, if you split the season between the two, assuming that you give Gavin Sheets a lot of playing time, or a decent amount of playing time, now all of a sudden your first base position, I mean, you might get 5 home runs out of Ariz. You might get a little bit more than that. Not a home run hitter, but every once in a while, you hit enough line drives. If you get a hold of one, it's going over the fence. He had 4 home runs last year. If you can get around 3 to 4, 5 home runs out of Ariz, get close to 15, 16 out of Sheets, now all of a sudden you got 20 home runs at your one bagger. Kind of makes up for some of it. You part of trying to find the algorithm, right? Is that whole situation in Moneyball where you're trying to replace all these stats from guys that went away, like McGuire. You don't need one guy to do it. You can find 3 or 4 guys to do it. In this particular case, you might have a couple of platoons that might be able to do it. Is there enough appreciation for bench players who bring, the clutch factor or that left-handed power hitter off the bench? There's a lot of teams that are moving away from traditional roles and focusing more on versatility. I mean, we've seen that with LA for the last handful of years, and now the Padres have been able to do that. Having guys be able to play multiple positions, having guys be able to do more than just one thing. So does Gavin Sheets' versatility and his ability to hit the ball over the fence get him on the team? It depends how much you want to evaluate spring training results. There's one player that had a remarkable spring training back in 2011 that ended up making a team and then being DFA'd within a month and never played Major League Baseball again. We're going to talk about that player and the comparisons to Gavin Sheets when we come back on the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local from 10 to 2, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.
Quitting.
10:35 of the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local from 10 to 2. Talking a lot of Padres baseball, really focused on Gavin Sheets in this first hour just because of how he has played his way, and he's playing his way on his roster. He ain't going down without a fight. And there's some interesting things made about him in an article by AJ Cassavell, in which Tony La Russa, who had Sheets in Chicago as a young player, reached out to Mike Schilt about Sheets during the offseason. And La Russa, being the Cardinal guy that he was for so long, and obviously Mike Schilt being the Cardinals guy for so long, gave them this perspective of being a guy that he wanted to have on the team. He said, Mike Schilt recalled Tony La Russa saying, "You can win with this guy." And Schilt said, "That's all I needed to know from a guy that's won the second most games of anyone to ever manage. That was enough to sign off on it for me." And a month after that, Sheets during spring training has gone 9 for 34 with a 1051 OPS, 5 home runs, and 10 RBIs. He entered play Wednesday with a homer in each of his last 3 games, then one-upped himself by hitting 2 against his former club, the Chicago White Sox, on Tuesday, including a majestic walk-off 2-run blast as the Padres beat the White Sox 7-5. It's only spring training, sure, but those always feel good, Sheets said on his walk-off home run. That's on AJ Cassavell's piece on Padres.com. We've already talked about kind of the numbers game that you have to play to get Sheets on the roster. And Cassavell believes that Sheets will make this team, at least in his latest projection. Now, there's a lot of roster projections out there. I don't necessarily know. I think he will. But the question is, how much can you use spring training to evaluate a player? I mean, there's obviously some good things there, right? And the thing is you look at Sheets' track record as a professional baseball player in an organization that is notably one of the worst organizations in the sport. And I've been told it's getting better now with Will Venable as the manager, but it starts from the top with Jerry Reinsdorf. I have known a couple of players and people that have been part of the White Sox organization. And based on what they have told me about playing in said organization or having loved ones that have played in said organization, it's not very great for development or getting guys ready to play at the big league level. It's just not. From one player that I know that played in the organization, he talked about how just getting anybody in the minor leagues in the White Sox organization from a coaching standpoint, and this is during the time that Sheets was a member of the White Sox, so who knows what it is right now, but it doesn't matter anymore. They said, if I wanted to get in extra work, it was like pulling teeth with the coaching staff to get me what I needed to get in the extra work. If I wanted to take extra BP, it was met by a disgruntled groan of, I can't believe you want to do that right now. I mean, what kind of professional organization can run things like that? What else are you doing? You're getting paid to be a baseball coach and part of the organization. I mean, that's what your job is. Anytime, extra work. Hey, can I get some more work here? Can I get some more stuff? That it was always meant with some type of either excuse or groan of why they didn't want to do it. Not one of the best when it comes to development. I've heard the same thing from the way the players were, the way that they feel in the organization. I heard a lot of them wanted out. Minor league players wanted out of the White Sox organization at the deadline. So from that perspective, and you look at Sheets' overall numbers, I mean, he hit 233 last year with a 660 OPS, a 90 OPS plus. The previous year, 599 OPS, a 64 OPS plus. And in 2021 and 2022, his first two seasons in the big leagues, it was a lot better. 830 OPS in 2021 as a 25-year-old. He only played in 54 games and had 179 plate appearances. It's a guy that strikes out a lot, but has power. I mean, he's had double-digit home runs every year in a White Sox uniform. 11 in 2021, 15 in 2022, 10 in 2023, and 10 in 2024. And that's with some limited playing time in some of those years. He's had a negative WAR every year but his first year. So when you look at the spring training results, it's hard to pull in and be like, this guy's going to be just great just because he's off to a great start. There was another player like that. His name is Jake Fox. Now, Jake Fox, probably had one of the best spring trainings ever, as he was a member of the Baltimore Orioles. He entered that spring training, clear sense of urgency, knowing he didn't have a defined role or position and had to make an impression. He had to prove himself after years of minor league play, and his mentality was all or nothing. And then he goes out in spring training, hits 297 with 10 homers in just 27 games. I mean, he was taking important players deep too, like guys like Max Scherzer and everything like that. He went from unknown minor leaguer to talk of the baseball world, earning the attention of reporters and even opposing managers. Didn't have a clear position, kind of a utility player, just like Gavin Sheets, can kind of, be very versatile, moved around the different spots in the field during spring training. So he came out, hit a bunch of home runs, hit for a high average, was very versatile, ended up making that Orioles team in 2011. Despite what that was, he ended up only playing a handful of games in that 2011 season and was designated for assignment, with his career quickly fizzling out after that one spring sensation. Now, I'm not saying Gavin Sheets is going to just fizzle out immediately, but it's hard to evaluate spring training statistics and making emotional decisions on a player because he happened to go through a fun little stretch in spring training. And I'm not saying this is like you can't count these stats, because you can. He's obviously doing a good job, but it's about the process and not just the results. I think the process is there for Gavin Sheets. I think some of the things that he did and the way that the Padres have given him a new lease on life and his buy-in that he has had with the organization, I think leads to him potentially being a good add to the team. But if we're just going to talk about Gavin Sheets from a results-based setting in spring training results, that's not going to be enough to make a ball club. I mean, how much of the results are we really going to look into here? Start looking at other players. I mean, Manny's not doing that great. We're just going to throw his results out. Dylan Cease got knocked around yesterday by the White Sox. Are we going to we going to evaluate that and be like, Dylan Cease, he just doesn't have it. Michael King earlier in the week didn't treat a single start in spring training like it was a real start to win a game. And the first time he did was Monday, and he gives up 2 runs, ends up giving 3 runs on a couple of hits, and it was probably one of his not as great outings in spring training. Are we counting those stats, or are we not counting those stats? You can't just look at all the good and be like, this is a good reason why they need to make the team, and then flush out all the bad. I'm going to talk about Xander Bogaerts a little bit more tomorrow. But when you look at Xander, I mean, are we evaluating Xander right now? I've already seen enough hate on Xander Bogaerts on social media. I've seen sarcastic tweets of like, oh, wow, he finally got a double. He finally got a hit. We need to get rid of this guy. Xander Bogaerts in spring training right now is hitting 278 with a 350 on base percentage. Folks, that plays in Major League Baseball. That plays. And the more these contracts continue to go up, the more his contract is going to be an average level contract in Major League Baseball. And they are going to continue to go up. These contracts continue to go up and up and up. I mean, did you hear what Vlad Guerrero Jr. wants on a contract? Are you kidding me? He wanted like close to $600 million. This is a guy that had to move because he got too big defensively and he couldn't field his position anymore. They had to move him to first base or be a DH only. He wants $600 million. Is that Xander Bogaerts' contract ever going to be affordable? Probably not. But it's not going to be an albatross contract as much as people think. And so when you look at spring training results, you're either going to be all in on them or you're all out. There's no picking and choosing which ones matter to you and which ones don't. Xander Bogaerts hitting 278 with a 350 on base percentage. That's going to play on this team this year. I mean, if you look back to 2023, his first year in a Padres uniform, it was a top 5 WAR season for Xander Bogaerts in his career. He had a 4.4 WAR in 2023 as a 30-year-old. Hit 285, 350 on base. That plays, guys. It's funny. I've seen that. Have you guys seen that chart now that's on social media? It's like a 3x3 grid, almost like Immaculate Grid. And they do it per team. It's like best player, loved by fans. Average player, fans are torn. Bad player, hated by fans. And they picked Xander Bogaerts on the latest one for bad player, hated by fans. Are you kidding me? I mean, we could break down Xander Bogaerts even more. And I want to do that tomorrow. But to complain about what he has done in a Padres uniform when he had a 4.4 WAR in 2023 and finished the season at 285 with a 350 on base. Sure, his slug wasn't great. It was average. Last year, he dealt with injuries in a 1.2 WAR. I mean, it's not like the guy has gone up there and swung like Austin Hedges for 2 years. So if you want to sit there and talk about Gavin Sheets, and Gavin Sheets needs to make the team, and Tirso Ornelas needs to make the team because they're both raking. And a lot of these are later in games when they're not going against some of the starting pitching. And again, throw that whatever you want. It's so hard to evaluate spring training from a results-based business. You have to evaluate the process. And all of us sitting in the stands and viewing from afar don't know what's going on in meetings, don't know what the Padres are asking these guys to do in terms of their approach, don't know what these players individually are working on. I mean, at this point, who knows what they're asking these guys to do, but just because the result is there doesn't mean the process is there for the Padres. So you can't over-evaluate these statistics. Tirso Ornelas doing a great job. And good for him, as well as Gavin Sheets. But if we're going to say that Gavin Sheets' numbers get him on the team, then I kind of want to pump the brakes a little bit on Xander Bogaerts getting crushed for being a terrible player when he's doing exactly what you brought him in to do in spring training. He's actually starting in games and going against some of the better pitchers compared to what maybe Sheets or Ornelas or some of those guys coming in later. I think that's a good point by JD's third. I think a lot of people evaluate Xander Bogaerts in the wrong way. And I think he's going to have a big year. I really do. Manny even said it in an interview. I think he's going to have a big year. A lot of these guys are healthy now, which is great. And Xander's healthy now. Dealt with the wrist injury. But I think a lot of people do dislike Xander Bogaerts because of the contract that he signed. Which, by the way, and we keep saying it, Padres gave him that contract. Everybody else would have signed that contract too. You dislike the guy because his contract, which is high, that he signed that you don't like, you think is preventing the Padres from being a World Series caliber team because they couldn't go sign the next free agent. They spent the money. These are the players that they have. They're all healthy right now, which is great, especially the way Major League Baseball is moving right now in spring training. But if you're going to dislike Xander Bogaerts, don't pretend it's because of what he's doing on the field when you know it's because you don't like the contract and you think it prevented you from signing some of the top free agents the last couple of years. And here's the thing. You're not going to be able to sign the number one free agent in the offseason every single year moving forward to these gigantic contracts that they're getting. The Padres did it for 4 years. They did it. And now they got these long-time contracts built in, which means they don't have the ability to do it again and again and again. We talk about the Bogaerts deal being nice, being okay. That Tatis deal is going to be like the biggest steal of the decade in the next couple of years. Some of these contracts are going to be grandfathered in. Look like all of a sudden the Padres are going to look like the Braves. And obviously a lot has to do with the new CBA and everything like that. But the thing with Gavin Sheets, to kind of wrap it up here, he's done a lot and he's done a good job. But you can't just evaluate the numbers. You got to be able to look deeper into it with the process of how everything's put together. And you have to look at who you're going to keep and who you're not. I mean, Eggy Rosario, you got to be willing to part ways with him. Again, some of it's a numbers game. I would imagine, and I can believe, that you could be in a situation because Rosario's out of options and because Gurriel's out of options and Joe and Sheets have options, you could see an opening day roster that has both of those guys, and that might be a surprise when we announce the opening day roster on opening day, wherever we're at. That might be the big surprise. There's usually one or two. I mean, I didn't think Rougned Odor was going to make the team a couple of years ago, and he ended up making the team. Hopefully, Gavin Sheets can continue to play his way onto this roster. I think he brings a lot of intangibles for a position player. I think his versatility is great. A power hitting lefty's awesome. I think the buy-in that he has with the team and that's the kind of sense of camaraderie that the team has put together, I think that goes a long way in Major League Baseball. I think it goes a long way in sports. He's bought into what they're asking for. And I think the biggest notch and feather in his cap was the roaring recommendation by Tony La Russa to Mike Shildt, a guy that Mike Shildt respects a lot. A guy that, as Mike Shildt mentioned, has won the second most games out of any manager in Major League Baseball, says you can win with this guy. That, to me, is getting Gavin Sheets on the team more so than just the home runs that he's put over the fence. Just more than the balls that he's put over the fence in the last couple of days and the numbers that he's put up in spring training. That's how you evaluate spring training. He backed it up with what Tony La Russa said. That's a way that he gets on the team. And hopefully now the competition increases for the other players, because that's good news for the San Diego Padres. Because that's going to improve their lineup. Do the Padres have a top 10 lineup in baseball? Despite the quiet offseason. They've been getting a lot of knocks in Major League Baseball in terms of whether or not they are a playoff contender. We'll talk about that later on in the next hour. But do the Padres have a top 10 lineup in baseball? We'll go through the top 10 lineups in baseball according to MLB.com. Want to hear from you. 833-288-0973. 833-288-0973. This is the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local from 10 to 2. San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. 11 a.m. on a Wednesday, talking Padres baseball with all of you. 833-288-0973. 833-288-0973. This will kind of be a, oh man. Have you, did you ever get like roped in on an email where it sends to a large group of people? Like almost, like how many people at work have a group where it's like everybody? Somebody in the Odyssey Empire had sent out an email to everybody that uses one of our products that does live liners, which is almost everybody in programming in the entire country. And so now there's an email chain of people trying to figure out how to get one random person access to this deal, and my phone is blowing up. Are you getting the same emails, Adam?
I am, and then everybody's replying all throughout the entire country, right?
RIP my inbox right now. Oh, there's another one. What is this about? I don't know if this pertains to me. I don't know how to get somebody here. And oh my God. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. This week is very much a projection week for Major League Baseball, MLB.com. He put out a couple of things this week. And our guy Anthony Castro Vince put this out. I might have to hit up Anthony. See if we can talk to him on Friday. But he ranked the top 10 lineups heading into opening day as constructed right now. I gave you what my lineup would be. His lineup for the Padres is a little bit different. Padres made the top 10. They made the top 10. It's good news. 12 teams make the playoffs in Major League Baseball. Unfortunately for the Padres, there's a lot of National League teams in front of them. In fact, the top 4 lineups in Major League Baseball are all National League teams, followed by 3 American League teams, and then another National League team. National League team, American League team. The Padres are behind 2 other NOS teams as part of this top 10. Which means they're probably not in the top 5. They're not. And we'll go through it here. But to me, the Padres lineup, I would agree that the Padres lineup is a top 10 lineup. Fernando Tatis Jr., Jackson Merrill, Luis Arraez. That's how I would do it. Manny Machado, Jake Cronenworth, Xander Bogaerts, Iggy Rosario, maybe a Gavin Sheets if he's played his way onto the team, Jason Hayward, and Elias Diaz. According to MLB.com, they have the Padres as the 9th best lineup heading into opening day. They go Arraez, Tatis, Machado, Merrill in the cleanup spot, Xander Bogaerts, Jake Cronenworth, Jose Iglesias, Jason Hayward, Elias Diaz, with Luis Arraez being the designated hitter, Jake Cronenworth playing first base, which we've learned from Mike Schilt is not even on the radar for the Padres, so take that for what it's worth with MLB.com. And then Jose Iglesias playing second. When you start looking at some of these lineups, I mean, to me, the biggest comparison, I mean, you could talk about the Dodgers all you want. And their lineup's loaded. Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez, Max Muncy, Will Smith, Michael Conforto, Tommy Edman, Andy Pages. Number 1 lineup in baseball. Mets, number 2 lineup in baseball. Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, Mark Vientos, Jesse Winker, Francisco Alvarez, Jeff McNeil, Jose Siri. I don't even know if that's the best lineup in that division. I mean, the top 4 are good. Lindor, Soto, Alonso, and Nimmo. After that, it's good. It's not great. I think the Dodgers obviously outdo the Mets. I think the Braves lineup is better. Now, whatever the health status is of Jurickson Profar after that fall he had in the outfield that tweaked his wrist. Acuna, Profar, Riley, Olsen, Osuna, Harris, Albies, Murphy, Arcia. I'll take that over the Mets roster any day. Phillies, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Alec Baum, Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos, Bryson Stott, JT Realmuto, Max Kepler, Brandon Marsh. I'd take that lineup over the Mets as well. But I still think the National League probably has the best lineups. Out of those teams, or should I say, coming up next in the American League, the Red Sox have the best lineup in the American League, according to MLB.com. Jarren Duran, Rafael Devers, Alex Bregman, Tristan Cassis, Trevor Story, Masataka Yoshida, Connor Wong, Weiler Abreu, and Ceddanne Rafaela, starting center fielder for the Red Sox. Not necessarily afraid too much of that one. And you look at the Yankees lineup that comes in at 7. It looks like an IR report. Jazz Chisholm Jr., Aaron Judge, Cody Bellinger, Giancarlo Stanton, Paul Goldschmidt, Austin Wells, Jason Dominguez, Anthony Volpe, Oswaldo Cabrera. That's a walking injured list right there, if I've ever seen one. Might be a tough year for the Yankees compared to their expectations. But the two lineups that, to me, are the most important on this list are, one, obviously the San Diego Padres, but how they stack up against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Because the Padres and Diamondbacks, that's the competition for the last playoff spot, in my opinion, the way things stand right now. And obviously the Padres can come around and do a lot better things. Arizona can, and they're going to make some moves at the deadline. But the biggest knock on San Diego right now, as they mentioned, is the weak winter that they had. Now, this Padres lineup is still strong. Very Tony Gwynn tradition where the strikeouts are going to be at a minimum and they can produce old-fashioned hits known as singles, as mentioned in the article. A lot of base hits with the Padres. They probably need a little bit more slug, and maybe they could get some out of some of the players near the top of the order. And I already said that I thought Fernando's going to have a monster season. But you look at this lineup and you look at the Diamondbacks lineup. How many people have been paying attention to the Diamondbacks? Because the Diamondbacks had a pretty good offseason. They went and picked up some dudes. It's very easy to forget about them or ignore the Diamondbacks because they were actually a better team last year than they were the year they went to the World Series. The Diamondbacks team in 2024 was better than the team that went to the World Series, and the 2024 team missed the playoffs. Eliminated from playoff contention on a mathematical tiebreaker on the final day of the season. Obviously, you're not putting that on a banner or the t-shirts. 2024. Better than the 2023 team that went to a World Series. We just missed it on math problem. Put that on the back of the t-shirt. They have to deal with the departure of Jock Peterson and Christian Walker, but you look at this lineup for the Diamondbacks, I think it's very comparable to the Padres, but it's pretty close. Corbin Carroll, Ketel Marte, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Josh Naylor was the big pickup during the offseason, and Eugenio Suarez, Gabriel Moreno, Pavin Smith, Jake McCarthy, Geraldo Perdomo, they just gave an extension to. That's a pretty solid Major League Baseball lineup for the Diamondbacks. Is it something that's going to make me shiver in my boots? Probably not. But that's the competition. We went through all the National League teams that have been on there. I won't spend too much time in the American League. I mean, you don't have to worry about them anyway. Even though you play everybody in the American League, again, it's only for a series. And the teams you're competing with for a playoff spot, not really LA. I mean, just forget about them. But it's the Mets, it's the Braves, it's the Phillies, right? One of those teams is going to win the division. The other two are making the playoffs. That's 2 of the 3 spots. And then the other spot's against the Diamondbacks. I don't think anybody in the Central is going to make the playoffs out of the division winner. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But look at the way that the lineups are compared. I mean, obviously the Dodgers one is far and away the best, but and these East teams are pretty good, but they're not like world beater lineups that you're terrified of. Padres have had a bad number against the Phillies. But Atlanta, Philadelphia, New York, Arizona is who you're competing with. Let's go lead off through. I mean, I take Fernando over Corbin Carroll. I'd probably even take Jackson Merrill over Corbin Carroll. Ketel Marte is a solid second baseman, good spot, but they're 1-2 with our 1-2, very comparable. Three-hitter Luis Arraez compared to Lourdes Gurriel Jr. Very comparable. Manny Machado, I think, is better than Josh Naylor with the stick. And then you get to the middle level, Eugenio Suarez or Jake Cronenworth. I'll probably take Jake. Xander Bogaerts or Gabriel Moreno. I know we're not comparing position players, but that's kind of where they're at in the batting order. Pavin Smith, DH, or Eggy Rosario / Gavin Sheets, DH. I think where they probably get the Padres are like the last three spots in that lineup. So what says you? Padres have a top 10 lineup in Major League Baseball. Is it better than that? Do they have a better lineup than the Mets, the Braves, or the Phillies? Or do they have a better lineup than the Diamondbacks? 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. I like the Padres lineup. I think it's very comparable to the Diamondbacks. I think you can flip-flop those. It's obviously top 10. But when it comes down to can the Padres be a playoff team? As part of MLB.com's projections that they've done, they don't necessarily believe they can. I'll tell you what I think when we come back. Are the Padres a playoff team? MLB.com says no. Braden Surprenant Show, live and local, each and every day from 10 to 2. San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.
Hey.
11:17. College basketball in full force today. Big 12 championship second round is on right now. Iowa State is beating Cincinnati 65-53. We're going to talk about the bubble later on at 12:30 and see where it's at for teams like San Diego State and UCSD. One of the teams in the next four out was Cincinnati. They won yesterday, and they're probably not going to win today. So that's one less team to worry about if you're the Aztecs. There's 9 bid stealers afoot. So hopefully we got to see those teams lose if you want the Aztecs to feel extra comfortable on Sunday. We talked with Ziegler yesterday about the potential bubble and where San Diego State fits in with the NCAA tournament, as well as how many teams the Mountain West would get. If you want to go check that out, wherever you get your podcast, search the Braden Surprenant Show. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast pages on your favorite podcast app. You can also go back and look on YouTube. Thanks to all of you on the YouTube page today. If you haven't already, hit the like button. Helps us out, gets the show out there, trying to grow the show, obviously, in its first week. So make sure you hit the like button. Try to spread it as much as possible. A lot of people don't even know that we're on right now. So we're going to keep doing that as much as we can. We appreciate all of you in the chat. A lot of the regulars in there, Maria and Tony and JD's third, EC Money. Big shout out to you guys joining us in the chat today. We're going to talk a little bit more college basketball in a little bit because the women's basketball team for San Diego State was remarkable last night in knocking off the top dog in the league in UNLV. I mean, UNLV has had a chokehold on the Mountain West for a significant amount of time now, and San Diego State women's basketball will play in the championship game tonight at 7:30, and our Chris Ello is on the radio call or the live audio stream call for San Diego State. He has done that for so many years now, and he is calling a conference championship game tonight. And just knowing, I mean, where the program was a couple of years ago, I remember talking with Chris about how miserable it was for that poor team trying to battle. They have put together a great season this year, and they're one win away from the NCAA tournament. So we'll get a check-in with Chris. I'm sure he'll start seeing a lot of you Aztec fans out there. A lot of my buddies that are going out this week for the conference championships for the Big West and the Mountain West Conference are leaving this afternoon and leaving tonight for Vegas. So I would imagine a lot of Southwest flights from San Diego to Vegas are going to be packed with some red and black later on today from Lindbergh Field heading to Vegas. So if you're heading to Vegas, give us a call, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. If you get in there early, go check out the women's championship game. Go support the Aztecs. But we'll talk about a little bit more about that in a little bit. We do want to I did ask the question, are the Padres a playoff team when you start going through some of these lineups? MLB.com says no. I'll break it up into tiers, but I wanted to get to your phone calls. Let's go down to San Ysidro where Jamie's standing by. Jamie, what's going on, man? Staying dry?
It was pouring in the South Bay on the way downtown, so hopefully that lets up. This traffic is nasty.
Oh, that's not fun. Other than that, what else you got for me? How's your day going?
Congrats on the new spot, by the way.
Thank you.
And so the lineups, the Mets are so overrated. It's crazy. I'd be more scared of Arizona's lineup than the Mets. And the Yankees are too high. Carlos Stanton will be out for at least 6 weeks, maybe 2 months with an injury, and Judge will be out for a month. And their pitching just got decimated, so they're not going to be much to worry about this year, obviously. The Padres, I think, should be ranked about 5. I think we should be with the Phillies, right around there. Not as good as the Dodgers, obviously, but you never know. Could get hot.
Does that put them in a playoff spot? They a playoff team?
They are definitely a playoff team if we don't have a bunch of injuries, and if our pitching does average or slightly above average, we're in the playoffs.
All right, Jamie, appreciate the thoughts. Thanks again.
No problem, sir. Have a good day.
Jamie in San Ysidro. Put it up there with the Phillies. I think the Padres are a playoff team, but again, you start looking and breaking it down. And again, the big knock for San Diego from all these national pundits is the lack of the offseason. But I don't necessarily think that is a major problem when they had basically the core of the offense already built into place. I think if you look at the division winners, the favorites right now are the Braves, the Brewers, and the Dodgers, according to MLB.com. I think it's hard to disagree with that. I thought Atlanta was the best team in the East last year, but with all the injuries they had, they kind of limped into the playoffs. MLB.com's got the wild cards at the Mets, Phillies, and Diamondbacks. And the two teams that didn't do enough, at least in MLB.com's eyes, are the Chicago Cubs and the Padres. I mean, the Cubs went out and got Kyle Tucker. But according to MLB.com, it's like, that's not enough. That's not enough to be a playoff contender. I feel like a lot of this evaluation came from off-season results, not remembering who was on some of these teams already. Excuse me. I think the Padres are a playoff caliber team, but they're in the did they do enough this offseason category. I think you have some dark horses in the National League with the Giants. I think the Giants are a little bit of a dark horse. They do have some talent, but they're the team that's always flirted with, we're going to spend money, and then they never do. St. Louis Cardinals, you can never really count out the Cardinals. Cincinnati Reds with Terry Francona, they've added some pieces. I think they could be a little sneaky. And even though the Pirates don't really try, they have Paul Skeens now, and they have a good young group of players that kind of wowed everybody last year. But the Pirates, they did what the Padres did in 2019. They got off to a good start, and they ran out of gas with a lot of their young players. And then you got the three teams not expected to contend. There's 6 spots out there, and I think there's 8 teams right now battling for 6 spots in the playoffs before the season even starts. In the preseason, is this a playoff caliber team? And even though everybody looks at the Dodgers and it makes everybody depressed down here in San Diego because of the fact that how are we going to compete with them when XYZ and they already shut us out for 24 straight innings and yada, yada, yada. And the thing is you're not competing with them. You're competing with the Diamondbacks. You're competing with the Phillies. You're competing with the Cubs. You're competing with the Mets. That's the division you got to win. Take those teams out of the division standings and put them in the wild card standings. That's the division you got to win. Don't worry about the Dodgers. Don't worry about the Brewers, even though just because they're the de facto good team in the Central. And I wouldn't really worry about the Braves. I mean, you only have to worry about 2 of the 3 in the National League East, and one of those teams will probably emerge as the favorite within the first couple of months anyway. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Send on down to Clay in the South Bay. Clay, what's going on? You're on the Braden Surprenant Show.
Hey, Braden. Hey, congrats on the time slot. Who better can fill it than Braden Surprenant?
Yeah, thank you, Clay. Appreciate it.
Hey, we are a playoff team. We haven't changed hardly anything except for those that selected or elected free agency for the offseason, and it happens every darn year. You're not going to keep everybody. Everybody wants to go out and seek their money, and they have the right to do so. I don't think we took a major hit by not signing big-name players. We've already got a roster that's pretty much big name, and the other thing is we've got a team, a TEAM. They play team ball. They approach it as a team. The team aspect overruns anything about new transactions or what other people think that we should acquire just to make ourselves competitive. We're still competitive. The only part where we really lost were 2. We lost Profar in left field, and we lost Higashioka behind the plate. Hassan Kim, yes, we lost him, but he was pretty much being injured for the majority of the season anyway. So, overall, our pitching is going to carry us through, and I think we have enough sticks to be competitive. Yes, and I think we have a playoff team.
I think so too, Clay. I think Clay brings up a good point. And Clay, I appreciate the phone call. I know you're always listening. Appreciate the support as always. The team aspect is a big deal in sports. There's a lot of times where you got a team and the way that your team plays together takes you to the whole new level. even against teams that might have more talent than you. I have just an experience of coaching now. My experience of coaching is obviously high school football. It's a different sport and a way different level. We have had teams that are extremely talented, really underachieved because they didn't get along, and we have had teams that weren't very talented or not elite that would take down teams that had a bunch of D1 players because we played closer as a unit than they did. And now football is a little bit different than baseball. Obviously, baseball, very individual sport, but there's something to be said about that and the way the Padres are set up this season. You got time for one more? Banna in San Diego. Banna, what's going on? How's it going?
Hey, what's up, Braden? How you doing, man?
Doing well. What you got?
I really like our lineup, with losing Profar and a couple of big pieces this year. If you look at it, our outfield, we got Merrill still. We have Tatis. We'll see if Hayward or Connor takes over for that position. The infield is stacked. It's probably one of the best in the MLB. You got Arise, Bogaerts, Crone, Machado. We'll throw in, we'll say maybe Tyler Wade some days, but I mean, we can be pessimistic, but we really have a solid lineup. Sadly, I think our biggest question mark this year is going to be pitching. Without having Joe and a couple of solid arms, that's where we're going to be kind of inconsistent, I would think. Hopefully not, but I want to stay optimistic with opening day around the corner. So I think our lineup's awesome, man.
I like the lineup too. I a little bit with the pitching. Wow, we haven't seen a lot of Kyle Hart yet, and I think Kyle Hart might be a big piece to this rotation, and maybe he is the guy in the fifth spot that really wows the San Diego Padres and could be that guy. I mean, we love the energy. First day, he says we're going to take down the Dodgers for the division. He already was talking about we, and it was day one. He just finally got his new Padre hat. So I like that attitude. I like that style he brings. So, hopefully we see him a little bit more here in spring training because, he might be the fifth starter, and that could be the pitching aspect that we need that we're not counting on because he's not a sexy name that we picked up in free agency.
True that, man. Hopefully, man. We'll see.
All right, Ben. I appreciate the phone call, man.
Always take it easy.
All right, see you. We got a championship game tonight in Vegas, in the Mountain West. Women's basketball for the Aztecs. Chris Ello will join us from Las Vegas when we come back on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. 11:36 on a championship Wednesday. Aztecs women's basketball in the Mountain West Championship after knocking off the number 1 seed and the team that has been really the stranglehold of the Mountain West for the last couple of years, the UNLV Rebels. Big win for the women's basketball team last night. And tonight, it's going to be a championship game for the women's team. And on the call and joining us right now from Las Vegas is Chris Ello. Chris, what's going on? Fun week this week in Vegas for you, huh?
Well, you always have a good time in Vegas, Braden, win or lose. But yeah, it's been great to watch these kids, and I hope that they can get it done tonight. They deserve it. They've worked for it all year, and it'd be fun. I know that they usually let the broadcaster go up the ladder and cut down a piece of the net. So I'm looking forward to potentially having that opportunity tonight.
Oh, that would be great. If that's the case, you got to get somebody to film it so we can replay it on some of the shows. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse.
And if somebody films it, I might get nervous and fall off the ladder.
Yeah, we don't want that. Absolutely not. Definitely don't want that. No. We got to tell somebody behind the scenes that take some photos and make sure we get that. But anyway, I mean, I've done enough women's basketball games over the last couple of years at the University of San Diego to know that UNLV is one of the better teams in the Mountain West Conference, and the Aztecs last night, I mean, really opened up a can and beat them 71-59. What was that's been a tough team for San Diego State to deal with for the last couple of years that you've been able to watch.
I mean, UNLV, has been unbelievable. Going into the game last night, Braden, over the last 3 years in conference play, the record was 61-3. So, that's what the Aztecs were up against last night. But fortunately, one of those 3 losses came to the Aztecs earlier this season at Viejas. And I think, that gave the kids the confidence to know that they could beat UNLV. But you have to play a great game to beat a team like that. And frankly, the Aztecs played a great game. They had a great game plan. They tried to take away UNLV's top scorer, and they were able to shut her down. She'd been averaging 29 a game over the last week or two, and they held her to 10, and most of the 10 came in garbage time. So they executed their game plan defensively. They've been really good all year, and they got some kids who stepped up and made some big shots for them. And, it's one of those games, Braden, where you open up a 20-point lead in the third quarter over the number 1 team, but the number 1 team's going to make a run at you. And they made the run, and they got within 7, and it got a little nervous there in the fourth quarter, but San Diego State hung tough.
One of the girls that I was fortunate enough to call her games last year at University of San Diego, Veronica Sheffy, a transfer to San Diego State, dropped 15 points yesterday against UNLV. I mean, it wasn't just her, but the Aztecs went out there and got some good players in the portal and put together a nice little run here this season with some of those portal ads.
Well, they got 3 transfers, and they had the other thing that was huge was they got 4 freshmen. And I'll talk about the transfer for a minute. And you mentioned Veronica Sheffy. She made second team in the WCC last year. She made first team in the Mountain West this year, and she deserved to make first team. She had a tremendous season. The one thing that people did not recognize about Veronica during the season was her great play on defense. Now, her coaches and her teammates knew about it. She's the player that always guards the other team's best player, and she, is able to shut them down. Now, interestingly, they did not choose her for the all-defensive team, and whoever didn't choose her is paying the price right now because she's shut down 2 top players in a row in this tournament. And, she's got a little bit of a chip on her shoulder, and I think the kids do as well. These freshmen have been amazing as well. Naomi Panganiban, who played for Terry Banford's great program at La Jolla Country Day. She's
she's beyond her years with the confidence she has out there. And, you know, she's for a freshman, she can miss 2 or 3 shots in a row. She'll come right back down and she'll stick one in your eye. And she made some big plays last night. So, you know, it's a combination of the freshmen, the transfers, and then they have a couple of great holdover players who are seniors, Kim Villalobos and Adriana Quezada, who've been there for 5 or 6 years. And, you know, they came up a game short last year. They were in the championship last year, but lost to UNLV. So they're hoping to take that extra step this time.
Chris Ello, host of Good and Chris and the play-by-play voice of Aztecs women's basketball, joining us on the Braden Surprenant Show as we talk about the women's basketball team for San Diego State in the championship game tonight against Wyoming. You know, just in the matter of time that we have worked together and been able to talk about some of the games that you have done over the years. I mean, San Diego State women's basketball, not necessarily in the last 2 years, but there's been definitely some down times, you know, during this kind of run. And there's been some questions on whether or not, you know, they were going to make a move at head coach with Stacey Terry Hudson, but just a great coach. And I know she's a wonderful person. And I mean, how great is it for her to start getting some of these results and being in the championship game 2 years in a row after some of those, you know, kind of hard seasons at the beginning of her tenure?
Yeah, no, you're right, Braden. And there were, you know, 5 or 6 years there where that team really did not really do a whole lot and really did not compete for, you know, any kind of run at any kind of championship. They were struggling to finish seasons over 500. J.D. Wicker deserves a tremendous amount of credit for being patient and recognizing, and this is something that I think goes beyond basketball, but he recognized that Stacey Terry Hudson was doing everything right. She got only great kids in this program. Every one of her kids graduated. They all contributed to the school and to the community. The basketball program contributed to the school and the community. They did everything possibly correct. They couldn't quite figure out how to win. But J.D. Wicker stuck with a great person and understood that if you stick with people who do things right, eventually it's going to turn in your favor. And he did. He stuck with Stacey Terry Hudson. She'll admit it that, you know, in a lot of different situations, she may not have had the chance to, you know, achieve what she's achieving now. But I give JD a lot of credit. He did the right thing. Her players stuck up for her throughout her tenure. And, you know, he supported her. And now they're reaping some benefits.
They're one game away from potentially going to an NCAA tournament. Let's talk about tonight's matchup against Wyoming, the 2 seed in the Mountain West tournament. Obviously, last night was a little bit more of an underdog story for San Diego State. They don't become the favorite just because they knocked off the favorite in the conference. What to expect from Wyoming tonight for the women's basketball team for, I think, a lot of San Diegans now that might be interested in tuning in?
Yeah, well, first of all, Wyoming beat the Aztecs both games this year. So you've got that to work against. Secondly, they have the player of the year in the conference, and her name's Allison Ferdig. She's a post player who scores about 20 a game with 10 or 12 rebounds a game. I think last night in the semifinals, she went for 17 and 18 boards. So she presents a problem because you have to double team her in the post. If you play her, you know, man for man, she's going to score, and she's almost impossible to stop. So you've got to scramble your defense, and then, you know, Wyoming does what any good team would do with a post player. They spread shooters around the floor, and if you double off, they shoot open threes, and they've got players who can make them. So, you know, Wyoming's a veteran team. 4 of their 5 starters are seniors, and they've been in the program the entire time. And so, you know, they work really, really well together. They play very good defense. But the one thing I think maybe San Diego State will have an advantage tonight is that in a tournament like this, Braden, as you know, you're playing your 3rd game in 3 days. Both teams have played the last 2 days. And Wyoming is not nearly as deep as the Aztecs are. The Aztecs go 11 players, and they use all 11. Wyoming really relies on the starting 5. And, they have a couple of kids off the bench who don't play a lot of minutes. And hopefully, for San Diego State, they'll be able to wear them down. Maybe the second half, Wyoming gets a little tired, and the Aztecs can take advantage of that.
Joined by Chris Ello, host of Gwen and Chris and play-by-play voice of Aztecs women's basketball in Las Vegas for the Mountain West Tournament. Aztecs in the championship game against Wyoming. You've called a lot of Aztecs games over the years via play-by-play. You've done a lot of great games in your career. How's a championship game like this stack up and, a potential opportunity to call an NCAA tournament game should they win?
Well, I did get the chance to do it early in my tenure. Believe it or not, Braden, I was doing these games in 2010. And that year, the Aztec women's team made it all the way to the Sweet 16. And it was really a thrill to be a part of that. So, this, if you call a team's games, and as I travel with these kids, you get to know them so well, and you really appreciate all the hard work that they put in and the camaraderie that they have. So to me, it's just fun to be a part of it. And if they were able to win tonight, just to sit back and watch them celebrate, that would be a tremendous feeling. So I think that's what I'm looking forward to most tonight. Calling the game, even if you're not playing, Braden, championship games, there's always something special. I mean, you and I even get a little pumped up for those softball championship games that we play. So, it's always, there's something's at stake, whether it's a T-shirt or a ring or a piece of the net. Everybody's into it tonight for sure.
Looking forward to it, Chris. Have a good call tonight. Thanks again for the time, and have some fun out there in Vegas. Hopefully, we're talking about some NCAA tournament appearances coming up this weekend.
Yeah, before I go, Braden, just really quick, from the Gwen and Chris show, I want to welcome you to the lineup. I know a lot of things happened and, things work out the way they work out. But, and all my love and respect to Craig and Annie. But I've known you a long time. And I can tell everybody out there that's listening to Braden, you're going to enjoy listening to him, because I've been talking sports with Braden now for about 7-8 years, and I've always liked talking sports with you. And I know everybody's going to enjoy your show. You're going to do great. And if there's anything we can do to help, we will. But I think you're going to be, just fine on your own. And I just wanted to welcome you to the family, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. That means a lot for all the years we've been able to work with each other. It was great to have you on the show too. So we'll have to do this again, maybe on a crossover from time to time. But I appreciate the kind words, Chris. Go call a great game for the women's basketball team. Look forward to seeing you in studio here in the next couple of days or so.
Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow, Braden. I'll try to bring you a piece of that net.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'd love to show it off. All right, Chris, take care. And Chris Ello joining us live from Vegas. So he'll be coming home, hopefully with a championship net piece in his hat, in his championship hat, as the all the other Aztec fans that aren't already out there supporting the women's team get ready to support the men's team. It's fun. Chris brings up, it's so true. When you travel, even if you're not coaching or playing, from that broadcaster perspective, when you travel with these teams and you're a part of the team and everywhere they go, you do get that bond and that connection. You see how much time and effort that these programs put in and these kids put in to go be a champion. And I was fortunate enough last year with the University of San Diego to travel to their regional for baseball, and it was fun. I mean, I got the chills calling games. When Jacob Christian hit a game-tying home run against Oregon in the NCAA tournament, I mean, it's hard not to get emotional, because you've watched that kid the entire year in all different settings go out there and compete. So Chris is going to have that extra juice tonight for sure. I've definitely experienced that. I mean, last night I was watching USD baseball. They were in Santa Barbara, obviously too far for me to drive up there and join them after the show. I was watching on TV. I'm like living and dying on every pitch. It's almost worse watching now, than being able to go call the game. So excited to get back with them coming up on the weekend. Do you have time for one more phone call in the hour? We'll get down to Clay in the South Bay's neighbor, Kevin, joining us on the Braden Surprenant Show. Kevin, what's going on, man?
Hey, Braden. Go Aztec women, and it's great to hear Chris with the report. I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you get the Mountain West app, that game should be streamed on the app, if I'm not mistaken. I think
so. You can listen to Chris's call on goaztecs.com. I think the game's actually on CBS Sports Network tonight.
Oh, that's even better.
It's on television tonight, so be able to tune in and then flip the audio on to listen to Chris.
Hey, there you go. That's the plan. So anyway, just a couple of quick comments here because I know we're up against it. Agree, the Padres have a good lineup and competitive lineup, and they're quite capable of making the playoffs. However, a word of caution, we sure thought that in 2023 too. And so the beauty of baseball is you got to play 162 games. And a lot of things can happen, and a lot of things have to go right, and some things can go wrong. It's really a war of attrition. And so there's going to be some surprises, but that's the beauty of baseball. And it's going to be fun to see how all of this shakes out. It's even going to be much more fun if the dreaded Dodgers don't quite perform up to expectations because they've got a lot of pressure to take everything. So it's going to be fun. And one thing on Fernando, I want to play devil's advocate real quick if I've got a moment, is that, and I understand all of the arguments for the hitting at the top of the lineup. My only concern is outside of Fernando and Manny, in that lineup as it is now, I don't know who else is your slug guys. And so if you have Fernando coming at the top, and I understand he's not always going to be hitting first every inning, but from a order standpoint of pitchers pitching around other hitters, Manny, if in my opinion, if it's not a back-to-back, ideally with Fernando and Manny, somebody's going to get pitched around quite a bit. And it could be both of them. So I have never understood how or why the Padres over the years have not gotten a slug first baseman. We have not had one of those here since I can't remember when. And I'm talking pre-Eric Hosmer. Gosh, maybe you have to go all the way back to maybe Nate Colbert for that matter. But that's my concern at this point is that if you put him up at the top, he's your slug guy. He's one of them. And he's a free swinger, which is great. But at the other point, there's some trade-offs here that have to be anticipated, needless to say.
Absolutely, Kevin. We're running up on the break, but I appreciate the phone call as always.
Appreciate it again, Braden. Good luck.
Thank you. He's got a good point on some of those. A lot of slug guys are batting leadoff nowadays. Kyle Schwarber's a slug guy. Shohei Ohtani's a slug guy. Ronald Acuna Jr. is a slug guy. More times that he gets up, the better it is. But it's just different ways that you can make a lineup in Major League Baseball. A lot of different ways to make a lineup in Major League Baseball. Protection is definitely a concern there, but I think you're going to need some guys to step up, and I think Xander Bogaerts might be one of those guys poised to have another good year. We'll talk more about Xander Bogaerts tomorrow. Go out there and defend his honor sometimes with some of the haters out there on social media. When we come back, we got some college basketball to dive into. We got some reports on some bubble issues. Plus, later on in 1:30, the athletic director, Kimya Massey of University of San Diego. A lot more to come. Braden Surprenant Show, 97.3 The Fan. Lunchtime hour. We got a lot of chaos going on in college basketball already. Games that impact San Diego State from a bubble perspective. Cincinnati already lost, so don't have to worry about them. Not like San Diego State was going to have to worry about them anyway. They were the last team on the next 4 out, so I'm sure Lenardi will place them with somebody else, but that's one less team to worry about if you're the Aztecs. Other teams in action today that San Diego State has to worry about. Arkansas, with the last 4 byes, is playing right now against the worst team in the SEC in South Carolina. It's a 3-point game. Arkansas has gone on a 10-minute stretch without making a field goal. So South Carolina is giving them everything they can handle out in Nashville right now at the at Bridgestone Arena, right on the Broadway in Nashville, holding back the Texas and Vanderbilt game, which also is a factor. Texas is one of those first 4 teams out. North Carolina has gotten underway against Notre Dame as they are now under 10 minutes to go in the first half. North Carolina up 22-10 on the Fighting Irish. North Carolina, one of the first 4 out teams as well. Arkansas's lead is now down to 1. It's 61-60, under 4 minutes to go in the SEC tournament in the first round. Other teams that San Diego State should worry about tonight: Oklahoma and Ohio State also playing. We'll get you the full recap and the update on that coming up at about 12:30. This is where you start doing your research for your brackets. I already know that Matt Scraby's doing a bracket group again for no prize, and he has a lot of listeners a part of that. You want a cheat code? Pay attention to what's going on in the conference tournaments. Start paying attention to some of these teams so you know what they are when you fill out the bracket. I told Adam already yesterday. What do we know about Wofford, Adam?
It's a college and not a university, and it's located in South Carolina.
And their center shoots granny style for 35% for the free throw line.
Got to get you in the Matt Scraby bracket challenge.
I know. I got the email. I'll be filling that out. I'm always part of this other one. That's a big one. That's great. And I can't wait to be either gloating about my bracket next Friday or talking about how it's busted next Friday at Dave & Buster's.
Not to rain on Scraby's parade, but can I give my annual I hate brackets spiel?
Oh, wow.
I hate brackets.
Why? It's fun.
Because people take them so seriously, and it doesn't allow them to enjoy the upsets. Right? If you pick a number 1 or number 2 seed to go all the way, and they're in the process of getting a huge upset, which we all love, you can't enjoy the upset because then your bracket gets busted. I like to just not fill out the bracket and enjoy the upsets.
I can do both. I'll fill out my bracket.
Most people can't.
I do 2 brackets. The pool that I'm in usually has 2.
And that's my other big pet peeve. When you do 2 brackets, are they the exact same bracket?
No, that would be dumb.
Well, okay, you either believe Team X is going to beat Team Y or you don't. You can't just say, oh, I had that upset. Well, you had it in one bracket, but you didn't believe it in the other bracket.
You got to you hedge the brackets. You hedge it. We'll hedge bet on some of the ones that you're 50-50 on. And then you let the first weekend play out. And then you go, all right, that's my best chance. That's the bracket I'm going with. It's kind of like a safety net. But that being said, you know what the bracket is really your real bracket. It's the first one you fill out. So for that, on the bracketology and filling out bracket, I love filling out brackets. I love Selection Sunday because then I can start filling them out. And I'll make one from scratch to fill out all the brackets. But that being said, I am one of those people. Like, the pool thing is great when you play, and even if you're not playing for a prize, it's still fun. And I get to a point where I, as a fan of college basketball, love the upsets more than I like personally winning a bracket pool. So, even though I think, what was the year, like Duke lost in the first round. I forget when they were a 2 seed to a 15. I forgot which year it was. I just remember, that was my freshman year of college, because I was watching Arizona play at Viejas Arena in the first round. They played Weber State that day, and I remember seeing the score on the video board at Viejas, and I was like, I have Duke going to the Final Four or something like that. I'm like, you know what? Forget the bracket. This is what's fun. The carnage of this. So I'm going to be doing that the whole time. I mean, there'll be some times I'll fill some brackets out. I hate, I dislike having to worry about my own team. I mean, I like having my own teams in there, but having to fill out brackets with the teams I root for is so hard because oh, look out. Wow. One of the Arkansas players just took out the entire bench of South Carolina on accident. It's a yard sale out there at Bridgestone. But anyway, it's hard to fill out like San Diego State and, for me, Arizona and TCU. Well, TCU's not going to be in it. It's not to worry about them. Tennessee and even High Point. Like, those are the colleges I root for. I've talked about this before. I'm very much a gatekeeper on sports fandom. I know that upsets some of you. Go ahead, do what you want. I don't really care what you do. But just know, if you don't follow some of the rules, I might call you a bandwagoner in your fandom. I root for the 5 colleges that my family attended. So I went down to San Diego State, obviously local school for the Aztecs. I mean, obviously I do support the other local colleges. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a fan of them. I work at USD, so it's a little bit different. But San Diego State is where my dad went. My mom went to U of A. I went to U of A for a brief amount of time, so I root for the Wildcats still. My brother went to Tennessee, so go Vols. And then my sister went to High Point. High Point is making their first NCAA tournament ever. So obviously rooting for them. I was living and dying in the Big South Championship game. Getting excited for the High Point Panthers. They were down 15 to Winthrop, and then they came back and won. Ended up winning by like 10 or 12, which is great. And then, of course, my diehard fandom for my own university in TCU. So when those teams were in the bracket, it's a little bit different. I would imagine a lot of you out there that are Aztec fans probably know you put the Aztecs a little further than where they probably will end up, right? Probably just a little bit further. I mean, to all of you that usually filled out a bracket where the Aztecs go to the national championship just because sometimes you do. There's people that do that, Adam. Like, we'll have my real bracket, then I'll have my bracket of that I want to happen with my team making it all the way. Just in case they do, I could get some bracket points for it. I would imagine there was a handful of Aztec fans that reaped the benefits of that in 2023 by having the Aztecs go to the national championship game, which is still remarkable. I was at the game last Saturday, and I was sitting in Sam's sweet seats down on the court, and I looked up, and like you look at the national finalist banner hanging up at Viejas Arena. That's the coolest thing to see for a program like San Diego State. Not only do you see a national finalist banner that had the Final Four logo on it, but how about, I mean, you see a lot of those at different colleges, and they usually say like 1942. This one says 2023. Sometimes you forget how cool that experience was for the Aztecs and Aztec fans. Such a cool experience. That was the same thing for TCU making the national championship in football. I mean, it's just making it there was incredible. The game itself was awful, but aside from that, just making it there was the coolest thing. I never thought I would ever see that in my lifetime. I mean, I grew up here in San Diego. You hear the open, fourth generation San Diegan. I've never seen any of my sports teams win a championship. The only close thing to seeing a team win a championship for me was watching back in 2012, Arizona baseball won a College World Series. But even then, it's not like a huge championship thing. I mean, sure, the conference championships, I've seen a couple of those. I've never seen my team win a championship, let alone be in a championship game. I was born in 1995. The Chargers played in the Super Bowl like 2 months before I was born. Even though the Padres were in the World Series in 98, I was 3 years old. It's not like I could remember it that well. I mean, I see like the highlights and stuff like that. And that Tony Gwynn home run at Yankee Stadium with Kilvio Veras at first base is probably the height of San Diego sports in terms of being on top of the world for a second. Because the Aztecs never really led in that game against UConn in the national championship game.
If this is the conversation we're having, do you still hold a grudge against me?
No, I don't care. I mean, that Georgia team
our
was
teams
legit.
played in the national championship against each other a few years ago.
I don't have
Georgia, TCU.
I don't have a grudge towards Georgia. That was a machine. I watched that team play Tennessee earlier in the year. I remember watching them play at Georgia. I went to Athens, and I went to the game, and I went with Tennessee orange on, And during that season, watching Tennessee football, I went to 2 Tennessee football games that year. I watched them beat Alabama, and I watched them play Georgia on the road. And that Tennessee team was legit. And the entire time, my expectations for TCU football that year was, let's just see if we could compete for a Big 12 championship game. And so I was paying attention to Tennessee. I have season tickets to the Frogs. And so I with coaching high school football, it was hard for me to get out to some of those games. But I was watching, and I remember going to the Tennessee game against Alabama. That was the coolest thing ever when they beat Alabama for the first time in 20 years. I can't believe I attended that game. Knoxville almost burned to the ground that night. And I remember I was trying to, there's no phone don't work at Neyland Stadium. I had no service. So I could not check the TCU game. They were playing Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State was kicking their ass. And then they made this magical comeback. And I remember seeing when they encouraged everybody to storm the field that day. So I went down on the field, and they were showing scores from out of town. I saw that TCU came back to win in overtime. And that was the first, like, oh, look, maybe they're still hanging around. And then I went to Tennessee, Georgia. And I remember watching Tennessee, Alabama going, these are the 2 biggest football teams I've ever seen at the college level in my life. And Bryce Young was the quarterback for Alabama. I thought he was the most talented guy on the field, but we looked tiny out there compared to the lines. And I remember talking to my dad, I was like, TCU does not have this size line. They don't. These guys are massive. And then I went to the Tennessee, Georgia game, and I was like, these lines are bigger than the Alabama line. I couldn't believe the size of those guys. And I'm like, there's no way we can hang with these guys. Bracket plays out. TCU beats Michigan. And then I remember watching the game going like, we could hang with Ohio State. But I don't know if we can hang with the size of Georgia, who obviously really wanted it bad. And the other thing, too, is TCU looked like they were in that game. They looked like they were just kind of happy to be there.
I'm not trying to pour salt in the wound, but I told everybody who would listen, all the guys I was with, I went to the game up in LA at SoFi. I told everyone, this isn't going to be close. It's going to be a beatdown, a curb stomping. And everyone's like, no, don't say that. You're going to jinx them. I'm like, I don't believe in jinxes. Like,
that's what Michigan thought.
I was like, right, exactly. I said, but at the same time, Michigan doesn't recruit to the level that Georgia does or some of the other bigger schools. And I was like, this game is over before they get off the buses. And no one wanted to believe me. And then what was it? Obviously, it was like 66-7 or something.
At one point, it was 10-7. Game was close.
At one point,
they not having Kendra Miller wasn't very good, and the defense. That was the other thing too, is the defense for that game. I tell you what, if Gary Patterson was the defensive coordinator for that game, they wouldn't have given up 60 points. But if Gary Patterson was still the coach of that team and he was at the game, they wouldn't have made it that far. And that was the difference between Sonny Dykes and Gary Patterson. Sonny Dykes plays that recruiting game, and Gary doesn't. We're going to get to your phone calls, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Evan in La Mesa, we're going to get to you when we come back on the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local from 10 to 2, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. 12-19 conference championship week. Arkansas's up 2, 3.2 seconds left, and they have the Rock bubble team for the SEC. Foul playing the free throw contest in that particular contest. I'll keep you updated on that. That will update our bubble watch as well later on in the show as we talk about where everything stands. I mean, I don't necessarily think this helps Arkansas too much because South Carolina is not very good. They're 2-16 in the SEC. They're 12-19 on the year. The fact that this is a game should be concerning to Arkansas fans, but we'll see how that one particularly works out. Texas and Vanderbilt will be up next in the SEC. ACC tournament update, North Carolina cruising over Notre Dame 38-20, 4 minutes to go in the first half. We'll get you more updates on that in just a little bit. We do have, there was a piece by, or should I say, a idea or a thought about a new qualified starter rule as proposed by Max Scherzer. We're going to talk about that in a little bit too, but I want to get to your phone calls. Speaking of college basketball, Evan in La Mesa wanted to ask about the brackets and filling out a bracket. Evan, what's going on, man? Hopefully you're staying dry.
Hey, Braden, Adam, good afternoon, guys. Good show. Just wanted to weigh in on this whole filling out a bracket versus not filling out a bracket idea. First off, just for some quick context, I love college basketball. The Thursday and Friday of the first round are bar none my favorite 2 days of the year. I take them off work and the whole 9 yards. But a guy I used to work with was totally anti-bracket for basically the same reasons that Adam laid out. And I thought he was crazy and I didn't believe him. And this will be my 8th straight year of not filling out a bracket. And it's the best decision that I ever could have made. And I'm not looking back, and I enjoyed the tournament so much more. And, I think if you're a huge fan and you're going to watch all the games anyhow, you don't need a bracket and you actually enjoy it more without one. If you're kind of casual, it can help you get into it. But not filling out a bracket is the way to go, and I highly recommend it. And we do have another system we do, which I'll not waste your time with if you don't want, but we do like a fantasy football style bracket draft where we each have 8 players, have 8 teams, and we kind of have a scoring system that way. But no bracket is the way to go.
All right, so you still got a little action on it. Still have
checks in the mail. Thank you.
Yeah. Planted phone call. Well, Evan, the first 2 days are great. You got to come join us on Friday for at Dave and Buster's. It'll be a good time to watch some college basketball.
Absolutely. I'll see you guys there. And I'm actually headed to Vegas tomorrow to watch the Aztecs in there, which I go every year. So,
oh, no, are you Aztec alumni?
Fun time of year, that's for sure.
Aztec alumni?
Not an alumni, but I grew up here and I've been going to games with my dad since I was about 10. So for about 25 years.
All right.
And season ticket holder, huge fan.
Oh, nice. You'll see my boy Sam and all those guys out there repping the Aztec. Should be a fun little weekend. When are you heading out today, tomorrow, tonight?
We're going out early tomorrow morning to make sure we get there in time for the 2:30 start and staying through the weekend.
All right, man. Should be a fun time
out
there.
Aztec fans show out.
Oh, yeah, 100%. They do a lot better than the show does. I can tell you that, Evan. Appreciate the phone call, man. Look forward to seeing you next Friday.
All right, absolutely. See you there.
To each their own. I disagree. I like filling out a bracket. It's your tradition. I feel like if I didn't fill out a bracket and I watched, I'd want to I'd be kicking myself. But I think that's part of the fun. I understand where you're coming from, though, enjoying the games. Speaking of, Arkansas wins by 4, 72-68. They advance in the SEC tournament, which means another team on the bubble with a victory. And again, we'll update you as that progresses. Oklahoma, Baylor, Ohio State, North Carolina, Texas, other bubble teams that are participating in games today. We'll have updates for you on all of those. Cincinnati already lost. They're one of the next 4 out. Not to worry about the Bearcats anymore. Talking about the kind of rule change, we got a little bit of time for this, and I want to dive into it. Max Scherzer has been very much in his older stages of his career, has been a player that has suggested a lot of different rule changes and everything to try to get the starting pitching back to what it was and get starting pitching back to a sense of that dominant starting pitching where there used to be a time where you would put you would look up what the starting pitching matchup was, and that would be like distinguish when and determine games to go to. You'd be like, oh my God, it's Max Scherzer and Clayton Kershaw, which is the infamous game from when what was it? Who was supposed to start? It was Maddox. Maddox was supposed to start, I think, against Schilling. Dodgers and Diamondbacks, or maybe it was Randy Johnson. I think it was Randy Johnson and Greg Maddox, I think, were the two starting pitchers for Diamondbacks Dodgers. And the disappointing fill-ins were young players in Clayton Kershaw and Max Scherzer, which ended up being probably one of the better ones anyway. But starting pitching used to be the driver. I mean, it came to a point where teams had to announce their starting pitcher and they would get fined or reprimanded for pulling guys late. Now it doesn't even matter. Even TBD could be the guy until, the morning of. Getting guys deeper into games. A lot of these players now blowing out their arms, because teams don't care necessarily about how many innings you go. They just want you to go full go for the amount of time that you have. They find that more valuable now. So Max Scherzer has put together some kind of rule changes that he would like to see implemented in baseball while we're at it. And one of them was the proposal to penalize a team that pulled starters before reaching the qualified starter threshold. He determined the qualified starter threshold was 6 innings or 100 pitches, or you give up 4 runs. Would this encourage managers to let pitchers go deeper into games, or would it create more problems? I think it'd be interesting. It'd be very interesting. But the caveat to this affects the DH. Now, with everybody having a DH, if your starting pitcher did not go 6 innings, or did not throw 100 pitches, or allowed 4 runs or less, and you pulled him before he reached any of those thresholds, obviously, if the guy's getting whacked, it's not his fault. I mean, it's not the DH's fault. Pull the DH. But if any of those 3 things happened, if you pulled the pitcher before any of those 3 things happened, you would lose your DH for the game. I think it's an interesting rule. I wouldn't mind that rule, actually. Very interesting. I think it plays into the strategy a little bit. He talked about a little bit, if that wasn't enough to get guys to leave players in a little bit longer, maybe you go to extra innings. If your starter didn't do those 3 things, you don't get a base runner on second base. Or if you do those 3 things, you do get a base runner to start on second base. Interesting proposals from players. I like proposals from players more so than executives, because the players appreciate the game a little bit more, and they understand the strategy, and a lot of the times the players are big fans of the game. That's why they got into it as young kids anyway. I see this a lot in college baseball right now because there's a lot of teams that have 2A guys, and there is some strategy now with some of the 2A players, because sometimes you bring in a 2A guy who is playing a position, and now as a pitcher, if you want him to go X amount of innings, you don't want to burn him in the lineup and take him out of your lineup. If a 2A guy starts a game and you take him out, he could still stay in and hit, which is what the Shohei Ohtani rule is, obviously. That's been implemented in college. But sometimes it gets a little janky, but the strategy's fun. I mean, there's a lot of times USD will put Austin Smith in, the kid from Granite Hills that's a 2A guy, to close out a game, and he comes in from left field, he goes out and pitches, or he is the DH and they have him warming up. As soon as they take him out of the game because he didn't start on the mound, that burns the DH, and now all of a sudden you have to use pinch hitters. So a lot of interesting strategy with that. I'm going to sit on a little bit, but I wouldn't mind it. I think that's a good move for Major League Baseball. I mean, we're changing all these rules anyway. Might as well. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Get back to your phone calls. When we come back, we'll also get you an update on college basketball, where the bubble stands. Ron and La Mesa, please stay on hold. We'll get to you when we come back on the Braden Surprenant Show on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. 12:35 on a Wednesday, championship week. Conference championship games everywhere. It's the tease of March Madness. Had some big games already. There's tons of games on today, all day long. They'll continue again tomorrow. Big game tomorrow for San Diego State. They will play Boise State in the 4-5 matchup. Aztecs trying to complete the 3-game sweep of Boise State after taking both games in the regular season. Boise State's a 1.5-point favorite in this game at the Thomas and Mack Center in Las Vegas. Good luck to all of you going out there to support the Aztecs. I know there's probably a lot of you either driving out there right now, heading down to the airport, getting ready for some Aztec hoops. If you get to Vegas early, women play at 7:30 at Thomas and Mack tonight for a championship game against Wyoming. So get out there and support the women's basketball team. They've had a great season. They've knocked off UNLV last night. We got the update from Chris Ello. If you missed that, you can go back and rewind on the rewind feature. Be sure to follow us on social media at @B_SURP. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and wherever social media outlets there are. If I have it, it's under B_SURP. If I don't have it, that account probably doesn't exist. YouTube, you can also subscribe to my YouTube page as well. All of you on the YouTube page, 81 of you right now, be sure to hit the like button and help our algorithm out and putting this out as much as we possibly can. It's great. So be able to hit the like button. 36 likes is great. Try to get that number up a little bit. We really appreciate it. All of our shows are in podcast form as well. So if you want to download and listen to it from an audio medium later on, you can subscribe to us at the Braden Surprenant Show. If you search for the Braden Surprenant Show, or even just Braden Surprenant on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts, my show should pull up. Hit the subscribe button. We're trying to grow the audio medium platform a little bit as well, and just trying to get the word out on the show. You can also call the show, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Talking some college basketball right now. We're going to update the bubble and where things stand, because today's the first day of some bubbles getting busted, and some teams still with the at-large, some bid stealers around there. There's still a max of 9 bid stealers still alive out there for the NCAA tournament. Selection Sunday is on Sunday. We'll have a reaction to that on Monday. And, of course, if you are a big college sports fan like I am, and you love the NCAA tournament, I think the first 2 days of the NCAA tournament might be the best 2 days in sports. Come celebrate that with us. We're going to be live at Dave & Buster's on Friday, March 21st, day 2 of the NCAA tournament, which is just as exciting as day 1. And we're going to be there from 6 in the morning to 7 at night with all of our shows. Ben and Woods will start things off. They'll get some good games going on. The games start early, as always, on the first couple of days. With them being on the East Coast, I'll take over from 10 to 2, kind of get in that middle range. Where you'll lead into that little break that we have in the NCAA tournament. And then Gwen and Chris will take over, followed by Matt Scraby, the Scraby Show. He's got the nightcap of the NCAA tournament coverage. We'll, of course, talk Padres baseball and everything like that, but a lot of NCAA tournament. We'll be out there, having drinks, having a good time, eating food. There's a lot of games, obviously, you can play. They're going to have every game on TV at Dave & Buster's. If you are a big college basketball fan, Friday, March 21st, Dave & Buster's is the place to be. We already know you're probably taking those 2 days off anyway, using your sick time. If I wasn't working in sports, I would definitely take those 2 days off and just enjoy. There should be your 2 vacation days every time. I actually know somebody that does that. He takes those 2 days off as part of his vacation, and he just goes all NCAA basketball for 4 straight days. If you're going to do it anyway, come out and join us at Dave & Buster's March 21st. Should be a great time. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Let's head out to La Mesa. My resident Big 12 fan, Ron, weighing in. Ron, what's going on?
Braden, it has been a minute. Congratulations. It's nice to know. I'll let you know my 97.3 The Fan bingo card is now completely full thanks to talking to Adam before your show. So thank you, Adam. I've got a blackout. Yes, the Big 12 is going to be crazy, but Braden, today's about you. I'm very proud of you. You've done a great job for 97.3 The Fan. And it's nice to see that some of the young guys, even though I'm an old one, get moved up in the hierarchy there. So good luck on your show. You know, I'll be listening to you. And if Kevin can come out of the bogs of Chula Vista, I can throw you a bone too and say congratulations. One quick thing, Braden. Yeah, one quick thing is the bracket thing. I love filling out my brackets. And as far as I'm concerned, the first 2 days are the only upsets. If you make the Sweet 16, I don't care how bad you are. It ain't an upset anymore. You earned to get there. And I live for the upsets. Long live the brackets, Braden, and have a great run, buddy. I'll be talking to you soon.
All right, Ron, really appreciate it. Thanks again for the kind words, and Godspeed on then. Good luck to your bracket adventures as we get through here and start thinking about putting in some brackets. Obviously, the conference tournaments are playing out. Now, you might be you might be one of those college sports sickos if you fill out the conference tournament brackets. Might be some of you in here. But the NCAA tournament, definitely got to fill out those brackets. I got a buddy, and I'm very passionate about high school football just because I grew up on a high school football field. My dad being a high school football coach for so many years, still coaching. I get to coach with him now at Cathedral. It's so much fun. But I've always been super into high school football. And I used to fill out the high school football brackets when I was a kid. That was like a cool thing for me. Wherever my dad was coaching, I'd fill out all the divisions on enrollment and everything like that. And we would do the brackets. One of my friends now, my guy, Nicky P, big high school and college sports fan. He has got a whiteboard at his house that he fills out the high school football brackets in town, which is great. And then he shows up to games. He shows up to games randomly. He'll come to a couple of Cathedral games where I'm coaching. Never says hi. He just he sneaks in, sneaks out. And then I find out later on social media he's at the game, even though he should have come over and said hi. He's just too afraid to. So this is the same thing at USD sporting events too. But shout out to Nicky P out there. I'm sure he's got the setup for the bracket. I'm not as crazy as some people. I've seen it on social media. Have you seen these people? Like they put up painter's tape in their house on a wall, and then they fill out the bracket on the side of their wall and everything like that. That's a little too much. March 21st, come out, watch some college basketball with us. Again, if you want to weigh in the show, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Aztecs play tomorrow, as mentioned. That game will tip off at 2:30. Chris will be back. And the fact that the Aztecs have to play during our San Diego State show, in which we have two alumni hosting the show, is rough. That's a brutal two couple hours for Gwen and Chris having to monitor and talk sports at the same time. And I know Chris is going to be locked into that. But Boise State's a 1.5-point favorite over the Aztecs. I think if the Aztecs win, they're in. But here's how the bubble plays out. Just to keep you caught up before you start filling out brackets next Monday. Last night, Gonzaga knocked off St. Mary's 58-51. They end up winning the West Coast Conference tournament after getting swept by St. Mary's in the regular season. So Gonzaga is a West Coast Conference champion. I mean, all these conferences have multiple champions. They have the regular season champion and the tournament champion. I think the regular season champion probably has a little bit more weight to it. But Gonzaga wins the West Coast Conference tournament last night, 58-51. Both those teams are going to be in anyway. But another ticket punch. We had 4 tickets punched yesterday in college basketball. Total, there are now 11 teams that have punched their ticket to the NCAA tournament out of 32. Lipscomb out of the A-Sun, High Point out of Big South, UNC Wilmington out of the CAA, Robert Morris won the Horizon, Drake in the Missouri Valley, St. Francis the Northeast, SIUE won the Ohio Valley, Wofford wins the Southern, Omaha the Summit, Troy the Sun Belt, and Gonzaga now the West Coast Conference. None of those teams are bid stealers, which is good news for anybody that is in this next category, which would be the bubble, according to Joe Lunardi. Bubble for most of these experts are relatively the same. I go with Joe Lunardi because he's been doing it a long time. There's other ones that you can look at. I know, some friends of mine go like, oh, Joe Lunardi doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, he gets paid by ESPN to do this. I'm not, I'm going to take his word for some of this stuff. It's okay. Just because he doesn't pick your team doesn't mean he hates your team and doesn't know what he's doing. But here's what he's got in the latest bracketology. For last 4 buys, last 4 in, first 4 out, next 4 out, and then another 4 after that. Last 4 buys, Utah State, Arkansas, Baylor, San Diego State. Means they don't have to go to Dayton, which is good news. Now, if the Aztecs can knock off Boise State, I think they're probably solidified in that last 4 buy, but you don't want to have to go to Dayton. They'll take it. I mean, San Diego State would rather go to Dayton than not play in an NCAA tournament game at all. But it'd be a lot better if they don't have to worry about going to Dayton and then going somewhere else. Last 4 in, Oklahoma, Indiana, Xavier, and Ohio State. Oklahoma and Ohio State both have games today, which I'll mention in a little bit. First 4 out. Now, this is where things get interesting because Boise State right now is on the outside looking in without any bid stealers so far and with not a lot to improve the resume. I mean, if they're out now, unless everybody else loses in front of them, if they lose today, they're probably out on Sunday. And so they're playing for their lives tomorrow afternoon. They got nothing to lose. And they got their backs against the wall. That's a tough opponent, especially one that you've already beaten twice so far. I mean, they're going to give you everything they got to try to stay alive in college basketball. They're the first 4 team out, followed by North Carolina, Texas, Colorado State, and the next 4 out, Dayton, Wake Forest, Irvine, and Cincinnati. Now, the Irvine news, I think, is good for UCSD fans because Irvine is ranked behind UCSD right now as of where everything stands, and it kind of gives you a guide of where UCSD is should they lose the Big West tournament coming up this weekend. So keep an eye on that if you're a UCSD fan. That's kind of the backup plan if you don't take care of business. Out of those bubble teams, Arkansas has already won today. They beat the worst team in the SEC in South Carolina, 72-68 at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville. Iowa State just beat Cincinnati, 76-56, beat them by 20. Cincinnati, as the final next 4 out team, will probably drop out of that spot and be replaced by Villanova or SMU, which is further down the pecking order. Don't have to worry about them too much if you're an Aztec fan. So Cincinnati eliminated, Arkansas staying tough in that bye category as they knock off South Carolina. I don't think it's enough to move them up any further than that, which means they're still in play for San Diego to potentially pass. Those 2 games have already happened. Games coming up or games on right now. North Carolina, who is one of the first 4 out, is taking it to Notre Dame right now, 47-31. North Carolina probably could use a couple of wins in the ACC tournament. If you don't have to worry about the Tar Heels, you better hope that they lose here either in the second round or even in the next round. Again, North Carolina doesn't have a lot of signature wins despite having a very good non-conference schedule. But they lead Notre Dame 47-31 as they are 18 minutes left in the second half. Other games today, Texas and Vanderbilt about to tip off. Texas is one of those teams in the first 4 out as well. Vanderbilt was one of the teams I think already in. So if you want Texas to just go away, you're rooting for Vanderbilt in this game to take care of Texas. Texas would be a bid stealer if they are able to win the SEC tournament, which I don't think they're going to do. Other games later on this afternoon at 3 o'clock Pacific time, Iowa plays Ohio State. Ohio State currently is the last team in the field. So a loss by Ohio State might put Boise State in without a win, and we'll find out what Lunardi puts out. He's now in the time where he's putting out these brackets every single day, or these lists. So Ohio State, you're rooting for Iowa tonight if you're an Aztec fan. This afternoon at 3 o'clock. Kansas State, Baylor. Baylor is one of the teams that has the last 4 bye. We can all root for Ron and LeMasa's K-State Wildcats If you're an Aztec fan, get them out of the way. Baylor's been okay this year at 18-13. They've kind of been a disappointment on the season. K-State 16-16, but they've got on some runs in the Big 12. And beating Baylor is not out of the realm of possibilities. They'll start around 4 o'clock. Last game for you, Oklahoma and Georgia. Oklahoma, one of the last 4 teams in the bracket. So all you Aztec fans, root for Adam Klug's Georgia Bulldogs tonight at 6:30 in Tennessee as they play at Bridgestone Arena in the SEC tournament. That's where everything kind of lays out. In terms of the bid stealers, you got a max of 9 remain. What that means is even though there's a lot more bid stealers out there, teams that if they win their particular conference, they would take a spot from one of the bubble teams. That is what a bid stealer is. And so even though there's a lot more than 9, since some of those teams play each other in these tournaments, they'll quickly eliminate. The max that you could get is 9. And if you're an Aztec fan or a UCSD fan, you want that number to go down as quickly as possible. Couple of instances, right? There's a handful of bid thieves in the ACC. One of them is Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame losing to North Carolina, they're going to wipe themselves out anyway. Georgia Tech, Cal, Wake Forest, Virginia, Syracuse, Stanford, SMU, they're all going to play each other anyway. So there's only one team there that could potentially steal a bid. It's basically just there's 9 conferences that have bid stealers left. West Coast Conference, no more after the finish. The Valley didn't have any. So out of the group, there's 9 conferences that have bid stealers still alive. South Carolina lost in the SEC. They only have 1 bid stealer left. So as long as LSU doesn't win, that's going to move it down to 8. Big 12, Cincinnati, off the mark right now. They got 3 schools left that could be a bid stealer: K-State, Colorado, and UCF. One of those schools, that Kansas State could go down today. Baylor's already in the tournament. Colorado is currently playing. UCF, we'll see what they got later on this afternoon. Big 10, Northwestern, Minnesota, Iowa, Rutgers, USC. Those would all be bid stealers in the Big East. You don't want Georgetown, DePaul, Butler, Villanova, Seton Hall, or Providence to win. And the Atlantic 10 is basically everybody, with the exception of the favorite in that conference in the A10. And in the Mountain West, for all the Mountain West fans to make it easier, bid stealers would be a Fresno State, a Wyoming, UNLV, San Jose State, Nevada, Air Force, and most of those teams play tonight. And then Boise State and Colorado State. And Boise State and Colorado State are those 2 bubble teams that, according to T3 Bracketology, would be, in fact, a bid stealer. So those are the ones that you have to worry about. Don't necessarily want those schools in particular to win. They do consider UC Irvine a bid stealer. So if UC Irvine wins the conference championship in the Big West, that might be a sign that UC San Diego might be in the NCAA tournament as an at-large, which might bode well for UCSD. Now, with all of these bid stealers and with all of these teams fighting on the bubble for one of the 68 spots in the NCAA tournament, 32 of them coming from automatic qualifiers, you would think that there's a lot of teams that are deserving of the NCAA tournament, which would mean, why not expand the NCAA tournament? Brett Yormark of the Big 12 discussed what it would potentially look like when he met with the media ahead of the Big 12 tournament this week in Kansas City. And he is all in support of expanding the tournament to 76 teams. I don't know about that. 76 teams in March Madness. Is this the right decision for the future of March Madness? Or is 68 enough? Is this money driven? Or do we actually think this would make the field a lot better? What does this mean for mid-major schools that probably deserve to be in the NCAA tournament more than some of these schools in the Power 5 that have struggled in conference? 76-team NCAA tournament. The right move for March Madness? We'll discuss at the 1 o'clock hour when we come back on the Braden Surprenant Show, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. It's time for our biggest fan. Biggest fan time at 1 o'clock. And my liner page just crashed out. Hang on. Drum roll. Biggest fan. Congratulations to today's biggest fan, Yolando Munoz from Chula Vista. Give us a call back within the next 10 minutes at 833-288-0973, and you will qualify for a grand prize. 20 tickets for you and your friends for a night in our Odyssey suite at a Padres game later this season. Remember to register your name at 973thefansd.com/biggest fan. Yolando Munoz from Chula Vista. Give us a call back within the next 10 minutes, 833-288-0973, and you'll qualify for our grand prize. 20 tickets for you and your friends for a night in our Odyssey suite at a Padres game. Yolando Munoz, you're on the clock. You got 10 minutes. Reminds me of Pulp Fiction. Yolanda, be cool. Be cool, Yolanda. It's a great movie. All time. Probably top 10 in my book. Not gonna lie.
That the topic of Pulp Fiction came up yesterday.
Really?
On Ben and Woods when I was in there with them. They were talking about Forrest Gump because Woodsy watched it with his kids, and we were talking about Forrest Gump winning Best Picture, and which is crazy because the same year that it won Best Picture, it beat out two significantly better movies. One of them being Pulp Fiction, the other being Shawshank Redemption. Forrest Gump won Best Picture over Shawshank and Pulp Fiction.
I can see that.
That's a
Was that 95?
I think 94.
94?
That's a tough blow.
I mean, it's like being Jackson Merrill the year that Paul Skeens shows up. Tough draw. Any other year, they probably all win.
Except for Paul Skeens was elite and Forrest Gump. It's a good
Forrest
movie.
Gump. It's a good movie. It's well done.
Your example would be better. Your example would be better if Shawshank had won and Pulp Fiction was Jackson Merrill in this example.
Are you anti-Forrest Gump?
I like Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump is not equitable to Paul Skeens.
I mean, I had to take film classes in college. It's part of the sports broadcasting department. You had to go through the film stuff first, and then you apply to be a sports broadcaster, and then you get into sports broadcasting. So I had to go through all the film stuff. The thing is Forrest Gump is such an elite movie because of the fact that it incorporates this random guy from Alabama into like the biggest major historical events in U.S. history. He's a part of like all of them.
I've seen the movie.
I know, but I'm just saying, like that's gonna work well for the Academy. You know, it's gonna work well for the Academy. The Shawshank Redemption was a great movie too. Also like that one. It's great. And then the Pulp Fiction is one of my all-time favorites. Big fan of Quentin Tarantino movies. I've never seen the Kill Bills, but Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, The Hateful Eight. I think his best one, or at least my favorite, and it used to be Pulp Fiction. I like Django too, but it used to be Pulp Fiction. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is phenomenal. I thought that was a phenomenal movie. And it was cool the way that, you know, what they did to Charles Manson and the family in that movie was remarkable. I thought Brad Pitt did a good job in that movie. I thought Leonardo DiCaprio did a great job in that movie. It was great. That was a pretty, because he has 9 movies he was going to make, or 10, whatever it is, and was that his last one or second to last? I can't keep up with what he says on that, but I thought he hit that one out of the park when it comes to movies. Again, what got us on this topic was Yolando is today's biggest fan from Chula Vista. You now have 6 minutes to call into the show. This hour of 97 Through the Fan is brought to you by Frozen Ropes, San Diego. Hey, parents, a message from Coach Kurt at Frozen Ropes. Is your child 6 to 12 years old? Their baseball summer league is the perfect fit for your player starting June 16th through August 17th. Summer league includes 8 practices, 8 games. Register by March 31st and save $100. Go to SanDiegoFrozenRopes.com. Talking a lot of college basketball. Talked to Padres baseball at the beginning of the show. Gavin Sheets, potentially. making this team. He's playing his way onto this roster with the power numbers that he has put up, with the versatility that he has. We've talked about kind of the numbers game that he has to win in order to make that happen. And I'm liking his chances more and more, but at the same time, and we talked about it in the first hour. If you didn't listen to it, go back. You can rewind on the Odyssey app. You can check it out on YouTube. All our shows are posted on YouTube right now, currently. And after, you can actually rewind on YouTube as well. And then all of them are in podcast form. Go check out that subject. A lot of Padres talk with their lineup and everything in the first couple of hours. But when you evaluate players in spring training, I mean, it's got to be more about the process and less about some of the results, because the results can be skewed. And for every one of those members of Padres fandom that evaluates Gavin Sheets, he's got the 5 home runs. He's 9 for whatever, 34, I think he is, 1051 OPS, left-handed power bat, everything like that. As much as you want to hype up his stats, you can't then crush Xander Bogaerts, who is actually having a good spring stat-wise too. I mean, are you going to hammer on Dylan Cease for the stat numbers? Well, he's working on things. Well, so is Gavin Sheets, right? So you can't over-evaluate some of these stat lines for these players. It has to be part of the process, and the ones that have the biggest inside track on that are the coaching staff and the front office members of the Padres that know what they want out of certain players, and that's what they're looking for during spring training. The mental makeup, how they handle adversity, how they fit in on the team. A lot of those. I want to talk about the NCAA tournament a little bit, because this has been a little controversial in terms of from some diehard fans mixed in with a lot of casual fans. But I think the majority of fans are against this particular decision. I think most of the commissioners and executives and, the powers to be of college athletics that like increasing their opportunities for funding and money, which I understand why, are more interested in this particular move than the fans are. And that is to expand the NCAA tournament. Now, our guy John Rothstein is very passionate about never expanding the NCAA tournament. You'll see 1 or 2 tweets of him a night doing that. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you should, because it's hilarious, especially during this time. This is March. We sleep in May. All the John Rothstein isms out there with college basketball. The guy is just obsessed with college basketball. But anyway, he's against expanding the NCAA tournament. I am too. You know who is on the other side of that is the commissioner of the Big 12, Brett Yormark. Brett Yormark met with the media before the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City this week and talked about his support for expanding the NCAA tournament to 76 teams. It's currently at 68. The traditional bracket is 64. We have the 68 with those couple of play-in games. We have the 4 play-in games to determine 4 teams, a couple of 16 seeds, and a couple of 11 seeds. Sometimes they're 12, depending on how the bracket seeds out. They want to make it to 76 and make every seed from 10 to 12 do these play-in games, get more at-large teams in to the tournament field. But is that the right decision for the future of March Madness, or are we good with 68? I perfectly think 68 is fine. I thought 64 was fine. I mean, what kind of impact is it going to have on the overall integrity of the tournament? I think it waters it down a little bit. And look, and I'm not like anti-expand playoff guy. Anybody tune in at any time I've talked about the college football playoff? Has anybody tuned into that in the last 3, 4, 5 years since I've been on the airwaves in some capacity on this station? What have I been? I've been a huge component for expanding the college football playoff. And it took the powers to be so many years to figure out you can make more money doing that. And now all of a sudden, they want to expand everything. I understand the money aspect for expanding the NCAA tournament. I mean, if you're going to do that, you might as well make it 120 whatever teams. Make it 128. We'll start action on Monday. It'll be a full week of the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament. But I think what it comes to with this is different, because how are we seeding this 76-team NCAA tournament? Are we doing this because teams like UC Irvine not getting an opportunity because they're getting drowned out by some of these by these Power 5 programs? Is it an additional way to get the Irvines in the NCAA tournament? Is it a way of getting, teams like Dayton in the NCAA tournament, or a Boise State or a Colorado State, or maybe San Diego State doesn't have to sweat it out with the season that they've had? Or is this about getting North Carolina in the tournament? A team that's been mediocre the majority of the season, that hasn't really earned their way in, even though they're beating Notre Dame right now 62-43. Or is it about getting Arkansas in the NCAA tournament? I mean, Arkansas struggled with South Carolina. Are we worried about some of those mid-major programs that need to win their conference tournament to make the NCAA tournament, and in a bad weekend get knocked out, and all of a sudden they don't have an opportunity to play when they probably deserve to be in there anyway? Who are we really talking about here? Who's really getting the nod to be in this 76-team field? You want to increase the money? That's fine. CBS and TNT are probably going to spend a lot more money for the extra games. How does this affect NIL? How does this affect the transfer portal? Conference realignment. Now, all of a sudden, they're going to have even bigger conferences to try to get some of these teams in? We'll discuss further. I want your opinion on that. Expand the NCAA tournament to 76 teams. 833-288-0973. 833-288-0973. Coming up after that to finish the show, USD Associate Vice President, Executive Director of Athletics, Kimya Massey, will join the program. That's all coming up in just a little bit. Final hour of the Braden Surprenant Show, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. 117, sun's starting to pop out a little bit here in San Diego, at least where we're at, out here in Serra Mesa. I think they would have called it Serra Mesa. Kearney Mesa's over there. I think we're technically Serra Mesa. Across from Tierra Santa. I don't want to ask geography questions to the chat just because you guys are geographically bad when it comes to Poway. Just geographically awful. No offense. We agree to disagree on specific locations that involve the city of Poway. Nope, there it is. Right on cue. But no, at Serra Mesa, it's starting to poke out a little bit in our Odyssey Empire. You can see towards the coast, it looks a little bit clearer up. East County usually gets the sunniest on days like today, but that's not Poway. I don't know if it's enough to play softball tonight or not, but at least it's starting to peak out a little bit. Lisa in the chat was asking about the Padres game and being able to watch. I guess the Padres, Jesse tweeted out that they're Pirates today. The Padres, Jesse and Tony, have taken over the Colorado Rockies broadcast video, and they're putting their audio over it. So that is, Lisa, that is what you got on that. Yeah, never mind, I had to forward it, and it changed. Yeah, you're welcome. Glad I could help, even though you already fixed it before I got there. Padres already up 1-0 in the bottom of the first inning as they played Colorado today. I saw a tweet, and it was hilarious. It was about, it wasn't a tweet, it was on Reddit. It was on the Padres page on Reddit. And somebody said, look, I know it's spring training, but the Padres are 5-12 and in last place in the Cactus League. We got to be able to turn this thing around. It's the process, not the results in spring training. It's been a big talking point on the show today. Can't be having overreactions to results, whether in positive or negative. And we've had some positive results so far in the game today. Bottom of the first inning, Padres have a 1-0 lead. Eggy Rosario. Oh, correction. Let's start from the top. Jose Iglesias led the game off with a double. Sounded like he was going to be on the team anyway. Leadoff double by Iglesias. Tirso Ornelas then singled to left. That got Iglesias to third. Gavin Sheets grounded out to first base that would advance Ornelas to second and score Iglesias to make it 1-0. Connor Joe grounds out to first. Advanced Ornelas to third, and then Eggy Rosario grounded out for your top half of the first inning for the San Diego Padres. Those are all the players that are battling for the last spots. Really in order. Today's lineup for the Padres is batting a lot of guys that are battling for roster spots. I mean, these are all the players that we talked about today, earlier in the show. Iglesias, Ornelas, Sheets, Joe, Rosario. Campusano battling for a catcher spot. Gonzalez is DHing, and then you got Wade, who might be on the team, but not a guarantee, and Lockridge. This is the battle for position lineup today for the San Diego Padres. Iglesias, Ornelas, Sheets, Joe, Rosario, Campusano, Gonzalez, Wade, Lockridge. This is a game to pay attention to. And I would imagine you're going to see a lot of lineups like this in the next couple of days or so, in the next couple of weeks. 2 weeks left. Less than 2 weeks left. March 27th is opening day. Gavin Sheets trying to play his way on the roster, drove in another run today in the 3 spot of the batting order. He's really buying in and finding a good spot in this particular team right now. Talking NCAA tournament, they asked about, with Brett Yormark, and obviously he's viewing it from a money perspective, and that's what he has to do. He's a commissioner of a league. He's commissioner for the Big 12 Conference. in which that conference is in the middle, a Power 4, but not part of the top 2 of the Power 2. And he's trying to find more avenues for his teams to make a lot of money. That's not necessarily the best thing for college athletics, but it is the best thing for the Big 12 Conference, which as a Big 12 Conference fan that I am, because the Horned Frogs are a Big 12 team, I'm okay with. But at the same time, a 76-team NCAA tournament is not something that I want to see. I don't want to see it. I don't really care. I just feel like it's just too many teams. I mean, because some of the teams that aren't going to make the NCAA tournament, I mean, you go through the bubble right now, and we talked about it because San Diego State's got to pay attention to it. And I think San Diego State has played enough to get in, and they deserve to be in the NCAA tournament. But I look at like North Carolina and Texas. I understand Texas 17-14 on the year. They got a winning record. I understand that Texas played in what was a complete carnage league this season in the SEC. I completely understand all of that. But there's something about going 6-12 in conference play that I don't think you should be overly rewarded for. And I talk about strength of schedule all the time when it comes to high school football because they have the system. It's the CalPreps rating system that ranks everybody, in the country, and that's how they seed the playoffs. And I don't know if they're doing that next year because the CalPreps guy, Ned Freeman, upset, CIF San Diego, and there was it was bad on both sides. And I'm sitting in the middle going like, I don't know what he said, and I don't know what you said back, but you're going to have to make some hay and go apologize or bury the hatchet because that is the best system that we have had for high school football. But anyway, metric-wise, you should be rewarded for playing some of the best teams out there. But at the same time, I also believe you should have to win some of those games as well. I mean, if you look at the schedule that Texas has played, it's better than what they have done against their competition has been better than Oklahoma. But you go through the schedule for Texas. They come in, they're 17-14 overall. They're 6-12 in conference play. They went 11-2 in non-conference, which is great, but their non-conference strength of schedule is 352 in the country. 352. Non-conference schedule. And we're going to reward them because they happen to be in the SEC. Let's talk about some of the games they play in the SEC. Texas A&M ranked. They lost by 20. Auburn ranked. Lost at home. It was close, but they lost at home. Tennessee, L. They beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma's another bubble team that didn't beat anybody else in the SEC either. Florida, ranked, L. They beat Missouri and A&M at home to give them a couple of wins, and then it's Ole Miss loss, not the best. They beat LSU, and they beat Kentucky. But this is a team that, even though they beat a couple of good teams, it's not a team that has the resume to be considered in when you can get some mid-majors in instead. That's why I'm against the 76-team NCAA tournament. I don't think it's necessarily the right move for March Madness from a fan perspective, but I know where Brett Yormark's coming from on a sense that they can make more money. But the question is, are they trying to get more teams in like San Francisco out of the West Coast Conference who had a good year and deserves to be in the NCAA tournament? Or are they going to get teams in like Arkansas or Texas that played a lousy non-conference schedule and racked up all their wins there and just happened to be in a good conference that boosted their metrics? It's an interesting topic of discussion. I'm against it. But in the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, there's a lot that you got to keep up with. There's NIL, there's conference realignment, and we got this new House Judiciary ruling that's going to happen in the next couple of months that everybody's got to be on page for as well. And that's going to be difficult to navigate for a lot of our local schools. Someone that can help explain that and talk to us a little bit about one of the schools in town is the USD Associate Vice President and Executive Director of Athletics, Kimya Massey. He joins us next to finish the show on the Braden Surprenant Show when we come back on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. 1:33 on a Wednesday afternoon. College basketball in full force right now with championship week. Been keeping you updated on all of that. Just talked about a little bit on the potential expansion for March Madness. I know that's not like a huge topic yet, but I'm sure it's drifting that way. And there's a lot of moving parts as all these athletic directors throughout the country are trying to put together. And joining us right now is one of the athletic directors of the D1 schools in town after about a year now as the USD Associate Vice President, Executive Director of Athletics, Kimya Massey, joining us on the Braden Surprenant Show. Kimya, what's going on? How's your Wednesday going?
Going great, Braden. Really glad to be on here. And hey, congratulations to you guys on this opportunity. This is great for you all and great for San Diego. So I'm really excited to be on and be one of your first guests.
Well, I appreciate that, Kimya, very much so. And I was talking a little bit with Anderson, and just kind of one of your big first interviews in town, trying to get people to know you and everything like that. But you've come from a lot of different schools, a former college athlete yourself. What was it about USD that made this the right move for you at this point in your career, even though you've kind of been here almost a year now? But what was it about USD that made this the move that you wanted to make when you became the athletic director?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. It's been a great first year, just first and foremost, tons of amazing people. And really, as I've watched USD from afar, I've been on the West Coast for quite a while, 9 years at Oregon State. I've really seen USD as a place where you can have a tremendous amount of success. And there's definitely been a good base of success in multiple sports. But I've always felt there can be more. And I always felt it's a place you can grow and you can develop incredible community, incredible place to be on a personal and professional level. But just so much potential with the leadership on campus with President Harris, but also with the alumni in the community. So I just felt it was a place where, personally I could grow and develop, but also continue to elevate this program to be, really one of the strongest, if not the strongest in the WCC and beyond.
Worked at some major athletic programs in the Power 5 conferences of, Oregon State, UCF, Indiana. How does your experience there shape your vision for USD athletics at the mid-major level?
It does a lot, actually. I glean things from every place I've been: Indiana, Michigan State, UCF, obviously Oregon State, Memphis a bit. Every single institution has its own culture. It has its own traditions. It has its own things that you have to do specific to that institution to be successful. So I do feel like it's really prepared me to be here in this role, because there are pieces of things, even though the schools are different. The geography is different, but I do think there's things that I've taken from each one of them and learned from that we can employ here, and I think in my first year, I really feel like I've seen that. And there are, I think I said a lot at the beginning when I first got here, there's a lot of low hanging fruit. And it's just really taking some of the things I've learned in those other places and potentially adding them here if it fits, but there's also things I've learned here that are very institutional specific. And we are a private Catholic institution. That's a different profile than some other schools, and some things will work and some things won't. But I will say I'm a learner by nature. I'm always trying to learn from other people and take things you've learned and apply it to the situation at hand, and make sure first and foremost what you're doing is going to be attributed to our student athletes' have success in our coaches and our programs. That's first and foremost.
USD Associate Vice President, Executive Director of Athletics, Kimya Massey, joining us on the Braden Surprenant Show. I thinking on the run, as you mentioned, and adjusting rapidly. College athletics is changing rapidly every single day. Conference realignment, NIL, transfer portal, you name it. How do you see USD navigating these challenges, and how have you been able to do that, and how do you plan on continuing to do that as everything continues to change around you?
Yeah, it's a wild time. My boss, last boss at Oregon State, said when I got the job, he's like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" With everything that's happening in the industry, I said, "Absolutely. Let's go forward." I've always tried to attack everything head on. Challenges are fun. There are opportunities. There are ups and downs, of course, but we're at a point in history of intercollegiate athletics where there's been more change in the last 2 years than there's ever been. And I can promise you in the next 2 to 3 years, there'll be even more. And I think if we're not willing to attack those things head on and, be adaptable and be nimble, then we're not in the right business. So we're going to do that here. We're opting in. I think I heard in one of your last segments, you talked a little bit about the house settlement. We're opting into that. We want to resource our athletes at the highest level as we can here where we're at USD. We're going to make sure that our basketball programs and others, volleyball, baseball, football, all our programs have the opportunity to be successful. We have some incredible things happening in our soccer program. Men's golf has been amazing. Ryan Keckley's got tennis at number 6 in the country. Many of our other sports are staying competitive as we move forward. So we're going to move into a direction where we're going to be resourcing our programs as best we can, and we're going to attack it and be aggressive with it.
Yeah, and you've already started to put some of those resources together with some facilities. I know at Oregon State, you played a key role in fundraising and capital projects, including the $161 million Research Stadium renovation. What are some of the updates you can give USD fans and the people of San Diego about your new facilities involving, the basketball training center and the new softball complex?
Yeah, no, it's actually good timing. I'm literally sitting in my office looking out at the softball field, which looks incredible. We're literally about a week away from that essentially being done. We'll be able to sort of take control of that facility in about a week and a half. And then our first home game is April 5th. So we're really excited about that weekend to really let our young ladies and the team get out there and show people what they have, but also just to unveil really what I think is a gem on the West Coast. I've been fortunate to be at quite a few facilities and institutions on the West Coast, and it's as good as a softball stadium as I've seen anywhere. That's bar none. So we're excited about that. The basketball practice facility and the new campus wellness center looks incredible. Again, I really, really believe the job that's been done with that facility is going to put us really at the top end of the West Coast schools in terms of a basketball practice facility. It's a $35 million facility. We should be able to move into that within the next month. It's going to be really incredible for our staff to be able to move into this facility. It's a game changer in terms of recruiting, but it also gives access for extra work and things that we didn't have previously. So those are the two biggest projects going on. We have some other smaller things going on with some renovations happening in some other areas, and looking forward to also eventually launching a golf facility really at our outdoor range as well. So we're excited about the next couple of years. We're going to be doing a lot of facility upgrades in many areas. And again, as I look at the West Coast and having been on many of these campuses, I feel like we're very well positioned to be one of the strongest campuses in the West Coast in terms of facilities. And that's a really attractive thing for recruiting.
University of San Diego Associate Vice President, Executive Director of Athletics, Kimya Massey, joining us on the Braden Surprenant Show. This is a very unique sports culture and market in San Diego, Kimya. Obviously, with the Padres, we've been the Padres flagship station. We got a brand new MLS team in town. There's a lot of other teams that are in town, and a lot of 3 D1 schools in town as well. And I know some of those pro teams actually play on the University of San Diego's campus. How do you plan to engage the community and help grow USD's fan base when you got obviously a lot of competition, both at the D1 level, but also with a lot of things to do in San Diego?
Yeah, I think after being here 10 months, that's probably one of our biggest challenges, frankly, is there are a lot of distractions in a good way in San Diego. There's a lot of really cool, fun things to do. But I look at our club youth and groups, sports in this community are really, really strong. Let's get young people to games. Let's get them the opportunity to experience what it's like to be in intercollegiate athletics. I think that's really a huge target for us as we formulate our plan for intentional marketing outreach moving forward. It's going to be a huge goal. We are a Catholic school. I think the parochial community and the Catholic community around this town, high schools and other schools, I think that's a really, really good opportunity for us to provide an opportunity for people to come to our campus and see us from that lens as well. The campus, as we know, is one of the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful in the country. We've been rated that through the last 4 years, I believe. So let's get people on campus to see the experience. And I think the other areas I look at too, I think about the military community, the Hispanic Latino community. There's a lot of very unique cohorts in San Diego, and we just have to be better in terms of being intentional in how we market to those communities and to ensure that we have a affordable, high-level Division I athletic program where you can come have a great experience with your family. That's really our goal. So we're going to put a lot of time and effort over the next several months, obviously here during baseball and softball season, but really moving forward to launch this in a big way going into the fall of 2025 with all of our fall sports. So I think you're going to see a lot more visibility from us, and we know that sport can really bring out a lot of things in the community in a really positive way. So we're really excited to engage in the community, have us be a big part of it, and really create an incredible experience for families and especially young kids.
We've been talking a lot of college basketball, obviously, and in the last couple of days, it's March. Conference tournaments are going on. Watching the bubble for UCSD and San Diego State, two teams in town. So obviously wanting being a part of that conversation. You recently made the decision to retain Coach Steve Lavin for next season. This season obviously didn't go the way that the program would like it to go, win and loss wise. Can you share with us what led to that decision to keep Coach Lavin and your belief in his ability to turn things around as, now you got, again, more competition in town with two D1 universities that happen to have good seasons this year?
Yeah, no doubt. It's really good for the community. I do think San Diego is a strong community from high school on up. And, I think having three schools at some point really strong is going to be great for this entire community. We need to catch up, just plain and simple. This year on both the men and women's side was not to our standard. I'll be the first one to say that. That's not our expectation. And, I've had conversations with Coach Lavin, of course, and talking about staff and talking about how we're going to retain players and what we're going to do in the portal. We've spent some time on that in depth to talk about what we need. I think, frankly, in the men's game now, the NIL piece is such a critical factor. And frankly, I would say it's the biggest factor. And having been at a school previously where you're engaged in NIL from day one, almost 4 years ago now, coming here has been a little bit different because we didn't have it. And I think people need to understand being able to retain a roster, you have to be in the game. And for us, that means educating alums, donors, et cetera, what that means, what that looks like. And frankly, also for our athletes. So we will be in the game. We will be doing NIL. We will be doing rev share. We're going to make sure that we're aggressive in the space in the portal. We're going to have a roster that's going to be highly competitive, and we're going to make good strides next year. So I'm really excited about that. Lav can do it. He's got a good staff. He's got people that understand the game and understand how to assess and evaluate talent. So we're going to go out and build the best roster we can. And with the facility, with rev share, with more emphasis on health and wellness and those things, there's a whole investment strategy here in the basketball programs. And I think that's important for San Diego to know that's not our standard. We've been to one NCAA tournament in the last 20 years on both the men and women's side. That's just not acceptable to me. And we're going to put everything in place to get us where we need to be competitive at the top end of this league, and also to be a perennial NCAA team once we get that right roster going for the men's side as well. So that's sort of where we're at.
You mentioned a lot of success in the athletic department this year, and while the men's basketball program, had struggled this season, and the women's basketball program not up to standard, as mentioned, you've had a lot of success. Football team had a good year. And then you go through and soccer, making the NCAA tournament, men's soccer, going deep into that NCAA tournament, and women's soccer trying to turn things around. Volleyball's always been good, but you got so many different sports on campus that have done extremely well. How do you balance the challenges of building the basketball program back up while still having the success of your other sports teams?
So that's a really, really good question. First and foremost, if you look at the landscape of college athletics, and you look at the impressions and you look at what the media does or doesn't do, obviously certain sports just have more scope. Men's and women's basketball right now, obviously with NCAA tournament, and then the growth of the women's game, there's a ton of bandwidth there in terms of eyeballs. We have to make sure that we're resourcing them effectively to make sure that those teams are competitive. And our WCC is a basketball league. It is. That's a priority. So that has to be a priority. Now you have volleyball, baseball, golf, tennis, softball. Soccer is obviously a really good soccer community. Even our rowing programs, our track and field and swimming, we have a lot of programs across the board. And I think there is a challenge at times of how do we resource our programs that can bring in more revenue and also bring more visibility, yet we want to make sure we're not doing anything that takes down the experience of the student athletes on the other sports. We have 17 sports, and we want to make sure all 450 plus of our athletes have an incredible experience here, academically, athletically, and eventually going into professional, whatever that looks like. So, fundraising is a big part of it, but the good thing about San Diego, I found, it is a completely connected city. There's a lot of people who know everybody, and our alums, we have roughly around 35,000 alums in this area. To me, there's enough to go around, and there's enough resources, and there's enough interest in all of our sports that we can be competitive across the board. I don't think we need to be a 2 or 3 trick pony. I really don't. And that's one of the reasons I came here, frankly. I don't want to be at a school where we only have 1 or 2 teams that are successful and everybody else is lagging behind. Because of the talent base here from a high school standpoint, because San Diego is a destination place, we can get kids back here who might be from this community or SoCal through the portal. We can keep some of our domestic kids here. And also, we're in San Diego. It's an international destination. So international student athletes love coming here. So I do think we're in a really good spot from a recruiting standpoint to be able to get talent, retain talent. But you do have to be intentional, to your question, about ensuring that other sports get the resources they need to be successful. And I do feel like we're doing a good job of that. We can always do better, for sure. But we want to make sure that we do give the Jim Petries and Brocks and others, Brian Quinn, et cetera, Keckley's, Evans, and a hell of a job. We want to make sure that they're getting the resources they need to be competitive on a national level as well as the top of the league.
Kimmy, I appreciate the time. Thanks again for joining us. Obviously, much success to you and USD as you continue to move forward. Look forward to all the great things that you guys have planned over there in Linda Vista.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, guys. Happy to come on anytime.
Thanks again to Kimya Massey joining us today on the Braden Surprenant Show. So great, and a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, we focused a little bit more on, USD and Kimya himself is his first interview in town on the radio waves as he becomes the athletic director at the University of San Diego. But, I talk about a guy that knows a lot of what's going on in college athletics because he has to, and being at a lot of these big schools. So, being able to pick his brain a little bit on trying to keep up with everything. It's so hard. I do it because it's fun as a college sports fan, but, they have to do it to, I wouldn't say keep alive, survive. I mean, just be able to survive and continue to move forward with everything in college athletics. I mean, the ever-changing landscape is changing a lot of different ways that these schools do things. And it's not just USD, it's San Diego State, it's UCSD, it's some of the other schools in mid-major programs, and some of the schools even in the Power 5 that are not at the top echelon. It's a different animal right now in college athletics than it was 5, 10, 15 years ago. And, when you got a guy like Kimya Massey in charge of your athletic department, things are going to turn around and go for the better. And USD Athletics have done a good job. But as he mentioned, when you are a non-scholarship football school, you got to create everything through basketball. And right now, the 2 schools in town, there's 2 D1 schools in town that are going to be in a conversation, if not both, in the NCAA tournament. And you're sitting at home watching them. So they obviously got to get that going. I think they're going to get a lot more resources this year than they have in the past. And it'll be cool to see what USD could put together, because it would be great to have 3 D1 schools in town be able to make the NCAA tournament and be good at college basketball. And like I said before, it's a unique market in San Diego. There's a lot of, as he said, positive distractions with a lot of teams. I mean, there's a lot of teams out there battling for, your consumption of the product with the Padres and MLS teams and the D1, San Diego FC and all 3 D1 schools and the Goals and the Legion and the Wave, Soccers. I mean, there's so many teams out there in San Diego that are trying to bid for the same stuff, as well as the high schools. But really good catching up with Kimya and a good conversation with him. We might be joined by Earl Edwards of UCSD tomorrow, still working on that and try to get a couple of baseball guests later in the week. But a fun day today on a Wednesday. Talked a lot of college basketball, mixed in some Padres baseball. Your latest update on the San Diego Padres that we have. It's 1-1 in the top half of the 3rd inning. Sorry, they just went to the bottom of the 3rd inning. But Padres got that 1 run in the 1st inning, been shut out the next 2. Again, lineup today for the Padres, very much so the 9 players that are battling for spots right now on the roster. And I would imagine you're going to see a lot more of that in the next couple of weeks, mixed in with the guys that need to get reps and be ready to go for March 27th. Coming up next, Gwen and Chris, as they get you ready for Chris out in Vegas. Going to call the women's basketball championship game today in the Mountain West tournament. We'll have more fun topics of conversation with the Padres tomorrow. I'm Braden Surprenant signing off. Talk to you guys tomorrow on 97.3 The Fan.